Welcome to tonight's meeting of September 23rd, 2024. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to the City of Westminster City Council meeting for September 23rd, 2024. We thank you for coming and would like to remind all in attendance that our meetings are subject to the rules of decorum that are posted inside the chamber doors. These rules are in effect while our meetings are in session and as well as during breaks and transitions between meetings. We want to be sure all feel welcome and remind attendees there is an expectation that this meeting shall not be disrupted and that threats and intimidation are prohibited. No attendees shall engage in audible expressions of support or opposition for any speaker. Signs and placards are prohibited, and all attendees shall remain seated in the seats provided, not in the aisles, nor shall the doorways be blocked. Roll call, please.
Councilor Carmella.
Present.
Councilor DeMott.
Present.
Councilor Azadi.
Here.
Councilor Hott.
Present.
Mayor McNally.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Normella.
Here.
Councilor Ireland.
Here.
Thank you. That brings us to employment agreement with Jody Andrews as city manager. Councilor DeMott.
First, Mayor, do we need to make a motion to allow Councilor
yes.
Azadi to, I would like to move that we allow Councilor Azadi to participate remotely.
And if I could, before you second, could that be for both the purpose of remote participation in tonight's meeting, but also for the purpose of remote participation in the executive sessions that are scheduled at the end of the meeting?
Yeah, I will amend my motion to also allow the executive session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Sorry. It's been moved and seconded to allow Councilor Azadi to be present for this meeting and for executive meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Councilor DeMott.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to authorize the mayor to execute an employment agreement with Jody Andrews for his service as city manager.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize the mayor to execute the employment agreement with the city manager, Jody Andrews. Are there any comments? Councilor DeMott.
Welcome to the job. We're pleased to have you.
Councilor Hott.
Just echo the sentiments. I'm very, very happy to have you.
Councilor Ireland.
Thank you for accepting. It's great to have you. Thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Also thanking you for all of your years of service and all the future ones.
Councilor Carmelia.
We're excited to have you here. Thank you.
And Councilor Azadi, I can't see you, but do you have anything to say?
Great to have you, Jody. I'm glad you're here.
I am glad it only took 2 months, almost to the day. And when I ask you if you would do this again as interim, you were very wise in what you told me. And I took that to heart, and we moved as swiftly as we could by law. And to do it in 2 months, I think, was pretty darn good for all of us. You will create a seamless transition. You already have. And you have sat doing your other job before getting this, and you have so well looked and watched, and you know what this council needs. You know where we need some help and where we want to talk and have some other kinds of input, and you have been so keen on that. So I look forward to the next year, and thank you for saying yes. Roll call, please.
Councilor Carmella.
Yes.
Councilor DeMott.
Yes.
Councilor Azadi.
Yes.
Councilor Hott.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Normella.
Yes.
Councilor Ireland.
Yes.
Where is our judge? Judge Lin Tang, would you please swear in Jody Andrews as our next city manager? And Jody, would you go down to the podium, and all of your family members and folks that you brought with you come and stand with you as you get sworn in. Don't be shy, get up, or I'll come and get you.
All right, everybody. Here, and then maybe everyone can stand. You're doing great.
Jody, if you would raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Jody L. Andrews,
I, Jody L. Andrews,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the constitutions
that I will support the constitutions
of the United States of America
of the United States of America
and the state of Colorado,
and the state of Colorado,
and the ordinances
and the ordinances
and city charter
and city charter
of the city of Westminster,
of the city of Westminster,
and faithfully perform the duties of
and faithfully perform the duties of
the office of city manager
the office of city manager
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Judge.
Of course.
Sign. All right. So picture?
Yeah, would you like a photo? Okay, the photo.
How's that? Perfect.
Great.
Sure.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Congrats, Jody.
Thank you.
I'm glad to see we have the new sign, city manager, instead of all those words we have to say. Do we have a motion for consideration of the minutes of the preceding meeting? Councilor Demott.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the minutes of the September 9th, 2024 meeting as presented.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of September 19th, or 9th. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to a proclamation for Constitution Week. Councilor Ireland will give that to, I didn't know if anybody else was coming, Joyce Thomas, and Councilor Ireland, as soon as you do that, just for your information, Chris, she would like a picture of all of council, just so that DAR has a record in their history books. So council, be ready to go down there as soon as this is done. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you. Are you from the Daughters of American Revolution?
I'm Joyce Thomas. I'm a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution Front Range chapter out of Broomfield, and Westminster is part of our area.
That's great.
I was the regent.
Wow. So I looked at my ancestry, and I had at least 5 ancestors that were in the Revolutionary War.
Wow.
And one of them was a drummer that drummed across the Delaware with George Washington. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I love our country. I love the Constitution. So I feel really privileged to do this tonight.
Great.
Whereas it is the privilege and duty of the American people to commemorate the 237th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America with appropriate ceremonies and activities, and whereas every American shares in the legacy of liberty, and we are grateful for the courage, conviction, and sacrifice of all those who have helped preserve and uphold the principles of the free society. And whereas we remember the enduring importance of the Constitution, we also recognize our responsibility as citizens to respect and defend the values of our founding fathers and participate in the unfolding story of freedom. And whereas in the celebration of the signing of the Constitution and in recognition of the Americans who strive to uphold the duties and responsibilities of citizenship, the Congress, by joint resolution of August 2nd, 1956, as amended, requested that the week of September 17th to September 23rd of each year be recognized as Constitution Week, with Constitution Day being on September 17th. Now, therefore, I, Nancy McNally, Mayor of the City of Westminster, on behalf of the entire City Council and staff, proclaim the week of September 17th through September 23rd as Constitution Week, and urge all citizens to study the Constitution and reflect on the privilege of being an American with all the rights and responsibilities which that privilege involves. Signed, the 23rd day of September 2024 by Nancy McNally. And I hope that you all will go read the Constitution if you haven't and know what's in there, because we are very blessed as a nation to have that Constitution. And thank you for being here and accepting this.
Thank you very much.
One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. And we'll wait for our group photo.
Yep. Can you take one with my phone also?
Yeah, of course. Happy to.
Get it set up for you. So you better do it.
Good. I'll do the big camera first, and I'll do the thumb photo.
Okay, great.
All right. Can you get everyone to squeeze together just a little bit? Perfect. Thank you, guys. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, and now the phone. Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
welcome.
How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I like the case.
Thank you.
It's a great print.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Do you know the artist?
I don't.
I don't either.
That brings us to public comment. The public comment portion of the meeting is an opportunity for the public to communicate with City Council. Each participant will be given no more than 3 minutes on any topic they choose. Public comments is not intended to be a back and forth discussion. If there is a public hearing scheduled for the item on which you wish to speak, please hold your comments and testify when that public hearing is called. Tonight, there are no public hearings. This evening, the city clerk has informed me that we have 7 emails and 5 voicemails by the deadline, which have been transcribed and posted online on the online agenda packet and forwarded directly to City Council. And city clerk has informed me we have 18 people signed up to speak. Please call the first person.
Yes, Mayor. First person is Paula Elefalson Gardine.
Welcome.
Thank you. Who do I give handouts to?
You can give them to the city clerk.
Hi, good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to address you. My name is Paula Ellefson Gardine. I'm the Executive Director of Environmental Information Network. My sister and I donated 134 linear feet of our research on Rocky Flats to the Norland Library Atomic West Collection. Our concern is about the Greenway and your potential participation in that Greenway. I would urge you to vote for option 2 and pull out of it. You have tremendous liability by being involved with that project. The latency periods for exposures to the materials emitted from Rocky Flats are coming due, and you're going to see a greater amount of people coming down with cancers and immune system issues. So I would urge you to please pull out of that option and not be involved with it. One of the issues that we're really concerned about is the wind and the resuspension. In some of the studies that we looked at, there were issues about the air monitoring. Anytime there is disturbance out there, there needs to be air monitoring that is checked weekly, not quarterly, so that everything is averaged out. I spoke with the DOE's Environmental Measurements Lab Director, Herb Bealey, back in the 1900s about why they pulled their WorldNet monitoring system from Rocky Flats. And he said it was because of the persistent resuspension of plutonium particles. Plutonium oxide is like a light green color, and if you could see it, these ultrafine particles, it would look like a green mist all over out there. They pulled that monitor because it was skewing their worldwide monitor readings, the lowest point of which was in Peru, the highest point in the world being here at Rocky Flats. This is a forever problem. This area should never have been allowed to have public access, and I urge you to support proper signage that explains the history of what has happened at this site, and that people should be recreating there at their own risk for obvious reasons, but perhaps for some people it's not so obvious. This is still an EPA Superfund site. This is like a creeping Chernobyl. The buildings that were imploded and buried out there have recharged with the groundwater, with contamination coming up into the stairwells of these buildings. This is not a secure site, and it's important that people understand how widespread this creeping contamination problem is. There's no liners for any of the landfills. Please be very protective of your populace here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Susan Hurst.
Good evening.
Welcome.
My sister made some excellent points. Some of them are mine. But I also wanted to talk about the wind. The wind that picks up these superfine particulates that like to attach to litter, Twinkie wrappers, Pepsi cans, and pine pollen. It's so buoyant. Plutonium can ride on the wind forever. It can keep being picked up and moved, and it takes one particle to cause cancer to somebody. Several years ago, Denver made the headlines for being #1 in the country for prostate cancer. And I don't think anybody wants that in their family anymore, or there won't be any more families. We have to take care of the people more than we do developers. That is so critical. We have to have monitoring that is constant, not just, let's just check it out once a quarter, once a month. No, you have to check it every week to see if there's a spike and something happened. You have to know when it's happened, or nobody can take any iodine tablets. So you can kind of wash that out if that's what happens. You can always hope, but we are not prepared to be living next to this site, even though it's closed and people want to have it opened up so they can ride their horses or ride their bikes or whatever they want to do. You know, it's still dangerous. And until we really understand that, you know, we're kind of doomed, because you see a lot of people with children that have mental deficiencies because they live out by Rocky Flats and played in the wind. And when they have kids, that's the problem. Now, I had a thing about the dose reconstruction project by the health department, and they had 7,000 contaminants of concern, which had heavy metals, organic compounds, and radioactive materials that were reduced down to less than a dozen by the Chemris Corporation. The studies we've had done by the health department of our wonderful state has done a bad thing for us. And so I urge you to look into some of the reports and their special little study sessions they want to give you so people like me don't hear about it. It's very important for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Daryl Essen.
Welcome.
David, you were real close, but you're not serious. Everybody here, you got 3 minutes.
Sir, you're talking to us, please.
I am talking to you.
You're not talking into the microphone where the audience can hear.
3 minutes. You've been reduced to 3 minutes. You have nothing but 3 minutes. I also want to show everybody here the optics here. You're sitting in theater seats. They're sitting in nice comfy seats. So you need to look at that and see how that is. Also, the sign above the mayor's head looking down on you, you looking up at them. So what you need to do is to think about that.
Next.
Next speaker is Robbie Baker.
Welcome.
Well, thank you, Mayor McNally and everybody. I'm here again. Got some questions on Rocky Flats. Do you have any plans, if the lawsuit gets kicked out of the federal government, to go through with the project? Because I believe there's a standing lawsuit right now. Don't know. I do know that I ride up there every weekend, and a lot of people from Candelas and a lot of people from Superior, the people from Superior crossing the highway, crawling over the fence, and doing their bike rides in Rocky Flats. And I just think you got a lot of people that want to ride there. And, you know, like they previously mentioned, signing, warning, everybody knows or should know that it was a very bad place. Same with the, you know, Rocky Mountain Arsenal at the other end. But you make a decision. You make a decision to go in there and recreate or not, you know, and if you make a decision to go in there, go. And I see a lot of people at the kiosk on the north end, and they stop and they read what's there. I don't think it's enough to really get the point across, but I don't think you're gonna have people going off trail like you have at the dog park and things like that, because there's a lot of cactus up there and there's a lot of snakes. And I've noticed that the Rocky Flats, whoever's doing the trail building in there, a lot of the trail is pretty much done. They put some benches for people to rest on, and they also have, I believe, a couple porta potties out there. Now, I didn't see that this time. I was up there last weekend, but you're getting on an average now about 40 riders a weekend up there. I don't know too much what goes on during the week, but and quite a few hikers. But more bikers than hikers, that's for sure. They're hopping the fence and coming from Candelas. And the downwind situations that everybody discusses, they wouldn't have built Candelas if it was super high risk. A developer's not going to get involved in that kind of stuff. It's too risky. And, you know, everybody's going to get cancer. Maybe. I've had it in 85. Where'd I get it? I don't know. My oncologist didn't know. You always want to know when you get cancer, how the hell did I get it? You're never going to know if you got cancer from Rocky Flats, Rocky Mountain Arsenal, or wherever you worked. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Jim Fenimore.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. Congratulations, Jody. Hope it's not too stressful. In a couple of years, you'll be looking like me. At any rate, serious side, a couple of safety things I'd like to bring to the attention of the city is down at 72nd Avenue, where it meets 72nd Way, right there by the Station 1 Fire Department. The weeds are literally as high as U-Haul trucks, like they're 6-7 feet tall, taller than me. So that's a safety problem, is if those gates for some reason failed, people in a car would come through there and not see the train, and there'd be a severe crash. So if the city could maybe contact the railroad or Parks and Rec or somebody and cut those reeds down right there along 72nd there by the railroad tracks, would be a safety. Next thing is the clock tower out here. On the west end of it, need to get a structural engineer to look at it because the bricks are cracking. And the only reason I notice that is I come from a brick family. So for some reason they're starting to crack right at the bottom. So we don't want to have that thing falling down. And then third is, I've been in this area since 1959 and very familiar with Rocky Flats. And back in 1966, I was 10 years old, and there's a cornfield out in front of our house. And I came home one day from school, and I was out there, and I seen something white laying out there, and I went out there, and it was a rocket it was about as tall as I was, about this tall, and about yay big around. It had United States government on it. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, I got myself a real rocket. So I took it to the house, stuck it in the garage. Pop came home, and he goes, where'd you get that? Out there in the field. I says, it's my new rocket. Well, next day, the federal government showed up and got my rocket. I only had it for about 14 hours. So I was really upset. But at any rate, what I'm saying is they shot that rocket off from Rocky Flats to test the air because they had a spill. And so they came to get that rocket to see what kind of contamination that was put up into the air. And that was 5 miles from our house. That place is no place to be playing around. You don't want to be stirring up dirt, dust, bicycles. I'm a bicyclist. I'm a dirt bike rider, motorcycles. I enjoy the outdoors, but common sense says that you're stirring up dirt out there, it's going to get into our drinking water, Stanley Lake. In fact, I used to go out there with my dirt bike and ride, and they would chase me out of there because they didn't want me stirring up the dirt with my dirt bike. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Gary Bland.
Welcome.
Welcome. I just want to say my appreciation to Jody. Congratulations. I know you're going to do a great job for us. But anyways, on a second note, everybody I see here, even Obi out there, last week's meeting was pretty grueling. I can tell you it was a long one. But anyways, when you guys spoke up and listened to finally a resident, what we wanted as far as a tennis center, I want to tell you now, I thank every one of you with my heart. You listened, and it was a well thought out process. When I seen all the hands go up for this tennis center that we've been talking about, you have no idea what this means to a lot of people. You're going to see them. You're going to hear from them in the future. But anyways, I ran into a situation today. I lost a family, but my grandkids, their grandfather passed away. His name is Harvey Ulmer. Just before this meeting, I was there. We paid some tribute to him. He's still in Germany. His body's still there. Just want to let you know that I want everybody in the world to hear his name, Harvey Ulmer, and what he meant to our family. I'm going to say thank you. You guys are wonderful. Let's do a good job for the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Karen. 'Karen. 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 '
Welcome.
Hello. I'm going to talk a little bit about the second reading on the groundwater situation there on 84th and Lowell. I talked about that a bit last time, and I'm still concerned that this groundwater is being given the green light to not count for, I guess, future construction at that site. And I'm a little curious and a little concerned because I can only guess what's going to go there. Probably more affordable housing. And I lost my house myself. I live in an apartment now. So I understand that housing costs a lot and we need more housing, but I'm a little concerned that we're finding locations for housing that are compromised locations. I don't know what the plan is exactly for this site, but I'm guessing because I'm seeing the MO in the whole city is we're taking sites that are a little compromised or that don't meet requirements for regular multifamily, and we're appropriating that for affordable housing. And it really would be a lot better if we made sure that existing apartment buildings were made affordable versus giving subsidies to developers to develop affordable housing that doesn't even meet current standards in the city. And I'm just afraid that this latest groundwater contaminant site is most likely going to be used or justified for use for affordable housing. And I'm just seeing a trend, especially south of 92nd Avenue, for affordable housing, compromised, not meeting standard affordable housing being built in areas where we don't allow other stuff.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Sherry Griffin.
Welcome.
Hello, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, and staff. Boy, that sounds loud. My name is Sherry Griffin. I'm here to talk about Rocky Flats, the bridge, the Greenway Trail, and regulatory capture. During the March 11th executive session, Councilor Azadi brought this up. Regulatory capture is a process by which regulatory agencies may come to be dominated by the interests they regulate and not by the public interest. The result is that the agency instead acts in ways that benefit the interests it is supposed to be regulating. The Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment is a regulatory agency whose purpose is to protect the public and the environment from possible abuses. There have been repeated assurances that CDPHE has examined the data and deemed the Rocky Flats National Wildlife Refuge safe for unlimited public use. However, the CDPHE, Hazardous Materials and Waste Management, is funded by the U.S. Department of Energy, around $200,000 a year. The DOE funds and controls their own regulatory oversight. This is the opposite of an independent agency regulating a known polluter and abuser of public health and safety. And as far as a refuge being deemed safe for unlimited public use, it's a common practice of the U.S. government to reclassify former U.S. military bases to wildlife refuges and place them under the management of U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Converting a heavily polluted weapons complex into a wildlife refuge is cheaper than making it safe for homes, schools, and businesses. And it was an inexpensive way to expand the national refuge system, especially in urban areas. Rocky Flats was not the first contaminated government site Congress turned into a wildlife preserve. In 1992, lawmakers established the Rocky Mountain Arsenal, a former chemical weapons plant, as a national wildlife refuge. Federal cleanup documents describe that designation as an integral component in choosing the site's level of cleanup. The military closed these sites to keep people safe from the dangerous work that went on there, not to save the environment. Researchers have also not examined the health risks to wildlife at the cleaned up sites as extensively as the potential danger to humans, which can take decades to result in illness after plutonium exposure. Although few problems have been reported, when you consider that the average lifespan of a bull elk is only 10 years and 8 years for a cow, elk just don't live long enough to start dropping dead from cancer, nor do any of the other wildlife for that matter. The buffer zone around Rocky Flats COU was never touched during the cleanup of the 1,300-acre former plant site because it was reclassified as a wildlife refuge. Please vote for option 2, withdraw from the IGA and decline to pay for the city's local match. Thank you all for taking the time that you've taken to really look at this serious issue. And congratulations, City Manager Jody Andrews.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Deborah Sigaloff.
Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Deborah Segaloff from PSR, Colorado. Thank you for bringing Westminster's role in the Rocky Mountain Greenway Trail up for discussion and hopefully a vote tonight. With respect to your options, certainly the path of least resistance is to stay within the IGA and continue to allow the connection of trails in the Rocky Flats Wildlife Refuge with those in Westminster. That, however, would continue to normalize the plutonium contamination of the refuge, encourage more individuals to recreate on the refuge, and allow for the transportation of plutonium into Westminster and beyond. But hopefully by now, you've been convinced that plutonium is one of the most toxic and carcinogenic substances there is, and that if there's a danger of inhaling it, you should leave the area immediately. And remember, the plutonium on the refuge that has the potential for becoming airborne will continue to generate alpha radiation for an additional 200,000 years. It is therefore morally imperative that you place the health of residents of Westminster and elsewhere as your highest priority and not let complacency sway your vote. Another option would be to proceed with the Greenway, but install informational signs warning of the plutonium contamination of the refuge. Whether the Greenway is fully constructed or not, such signs are necessary, but alone they're woefully inadequate. It's akin to placing a Band-Aid on a person who's bleeding profusely. Much more drastic action is necessary. In this case, that means doing all you can to prevent people from readily traversing between the refuge and Westminster. Therefore, I urge you to vote for option number 2, to withdraw from the Greenway. To vote for that option will take courage. It would, however, send a resounding message loud and clear that the plutonium contamination of the refuge is indeed a serious health risk, and that your goal is to protect men, women, and children in Westminster and elsewhere from those health risks. I'm not exaggerating by stating that your vote on the Greenway is one for the history books. And in that respect, how do you want to be remembered? By disregarding public health or by placing it as a top priority? Please vote option number 2 to withdraw. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Madison Cartaya. Cartaya.
I was hand making handouts. Not everyone got finished. I apologize, but will you pass them out?
Welcome.
I'm going to wait for them to get passed so it's not a distraction. So there's a visual aid. Thank you all. My name is Madison Cartaya. I'm here again to urge you guys to vote to withdraw from the Rocky Mountain Greenway project. And I want to emphasize that voting to withdraw rather than to proceed with platitudes is about more than a bike trail, to really mimic the words of my predecessor, Deborah here. It is about participating in a paradigm shift to stop allowing nuclear proliferation in this country, to say, no, we will not cover up and forget the damage Rocky Flats has done and the public health risk, and we cannot do something like this again. To talk about the importance of this paradigm shift, I'd like to teach a bit about the iceberg model in systems thinking. The best way I found to describe this is through the example of shootings in America, though I promise nothing will be graphic and this isn't to make a political statement on the subject. So looking at the model in front of you and seeing it as an iceberg, when we are looking at a theme, for this example, the theme of shootings in America, what's at top of the iceberg, what is visible, is the event. So an event might be a shooting. A way of interacting with a shooting might be a good guy with a gun. This interaction doesn't have much leverage to do much of anything about shootings in America, but could impact the event. So we go a step below events, and the further we go down the iceberg, the more leverage we have to impact this theme. So below the event is patterns. So what are patterns going on in shootings in America? They happen in schools, they happen in large crowded places. So let's interact with the patterns. Let's put in metal detectors, let's put in security guards. A little more leverage than a good guy with a gun, but still, as we've seen, isn't doing a whole lot to stop shootings in America. So we look below that. What's below patterns and has more leverage? Systems. What are some systems in place that impact shootings in America? And here we're looking at gun control legislation. That might be a way that has more leverage to possibly more so impact shootings in America than a good guy with a gun or metal detectors. What's at the very bottom of this iceberg model and what has the most leverage to impact change is worldview. What are worldviews that contribute to shootings in America? Maybe the view of isolationism and individualism. How easy is it to justify shooting someone when you view yourself as separate? What if there were a worldview in America of collective consciousness and love, and that it was a normal worldview to view hurting you as like hurting myself? How might that impact shootings in America if we could really impact that worldview? So that's what I'm here today, asking you guys to vote for option 2, to fully withdraw. It's about interacting with that worldview. It's about making a statement that we do not accept this, and we need to shift the worldview in America when it comes to nuclear proliferation. We need to shift the worldview when it comes to what can be covered up. The person before me said everyone gets cancer. That's not acceptable. Why is that acceptable in America? That's all I have to say. In the words of Princess Leia, help me, Obi-Aziati, Claire, David, Nancy, Sarah, Amber, Christine. You're my only hope.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Giselle Hertzfield.
Welcome.
Good evening, Westminster City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. For far too long, we have been victimized by a paradigm that prioritizes militarism and corporate profit over the health and safety of our families and communities. Rocky Flats stains this land as a 25,000-year radioactive scar of that paradigm. On the surface, one may wonder why we are putting so much of our time and energy week after week into stopping a mountain biking trail. Aren't there more important things to focus on? I get asked this sometimes. And the truth is, the Rocky Mountain Greenway isn't just a mountain biking trail, but it represents another way to normalize an entire paradigm that puts militarism and corporate profit over public health and safety. The Rocky Mountain Greenway represents a greenwashed cover-up of one of the greatest environmental tragedies in our state's history. Please don't let history forget what happened there. History is already forgetting, as it is not taught in schools or explained on signs. It hasn't even been shut down for 50 years, and the public knowledge is already fading. It is fading at a time when the US has committed upwards of $2 trillion to modernize our entire nuclear weapons arsenal, including the construction of a new plutonium pit facility at the Savannah River site, slated to be the second most expensive building in the world, second only to Mecca. Rocky Flats is not a standalone case that exists in a vacuum. The decisions that are made with regard to this site could have a resounding impact on other contaminated sites around the nation. We need a new paradigm that puts community health and safety first, and you can be an important part of that. Leaders rarely make history by doing the thing that is easiest or the most convenient. Leaders make history by acting boldly, following their conscience, and standing on the morally right side of history, even when it is challenging or when the stakes feel high. Your community is counting on you to make the right choice this evening, and I hope you will hear us when we say loud and clear that we do not want Westminster to continue to be a part of the Rocky Mountain Greenway project. Please be courageous, be strong, stand with your community, and vote for option 2 to withdraw completely from the Greenway project intergovernmental agreement. Your constituents and community members have your back, and you will have our deepest gratitude when you make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Chris Allred.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Hi, my name is Chris Allred, commenting for Rocky Mountain Peace and Justice Center. Thank you for your time and attention to the important issue of Rocky Flats. I'd like to make a quick announcement on behalf of my good friend, Jeff Geip. He's an artist, and his father worked at Rocky Flats. And he spent 10 years interviewing former workers, scientists, officials, and affected residents for a documentary about Rocky Flats. It's called The Half-Life of Memory and will premiere at the Denver Film Festival in November. And I'd like to thank this council. I think that you have shown great leadership and transparency in government to give a matter as important as public health the time and attention that is needed. We urge you to please vote for option 2, withdrawal from the IGA for the Rocky Mountain Greenway. We believe this is the strongest choice to protect public health. What could be more important than protecting our public health? This is why we've remained steady in showing up and speaking and organizing. The Rocky Mountain Greenway should never have made it this far in development, despite significant warnings from scientists, academics, public health experts alike. The project is forged ahead, but the fight is not over, and we know that this community's health and well-being is worth fighting for. The radiation standards which designate Rocky Flats National Wildlife Refuge for unlimited use and unrestricted exposure are not sufficiently protective of the most vulnerable, women, children, and the elderly. These insufficient standards are the result of regulatory capture, as others have stated tonight. We must continue to dismantle regulatory capture so that we are truly empowered to protect our health and well-being. These pictures passed around were taken by a member of the community last Thursday, September 19th. This is emblematic of what we face, of the challenge that we face. It's what Dr. Ketterer was talking about when he took air monitoring of the dust out there at Rocky Flats. This is on the federal government property up on looming along on the hill. So, in summary, please make a stand to deny further involvement in this project. Like Broomfield and Superior, you can help to empower other local governments to protect their citizens. Your decision to withdraw sets a precedent, and it is crucial to protecting the health and well-being of this community. We believe in your courage to do this, and you have the community's support to see this through. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Jeff Geip. Jeff Geip.
I don't know if he can make it. He was trying to be here on time.
Thank you. Tom Lampo.
Welcome.
Hello, it's good to be back with you guys. I'm Tom Lampo, and I'm here to lift up Westminster in prayer. Please join me in prayer.
Heavenly Father, in Jesus Christ's name, we invite you here to Westminster to be with us and to guide us. Westminster is yours, and you are always welcome here. We come before you in humility, knowing you are God, and there are no powers greater than you. Isaiah 43:13 states, I am God and always will be. No one is able to take anything out of my hand. I do something, and who can change it? Your ways are true and just. Help us to understand our humanity and your majesty and holiness. Father, we are living in times like no other throughout history. The uncertainty is great, and there are huge consequences. If we trust in what we see, we can get caught up in the chaos of the moment. Change our direction. Help us to focus and trust in your word. Hebrews 4:12 states, for the word of God is alive and active, sharper than any double-edged sword. It penetrates even to dividing soul and spirit, joints and marrow. It judges the thoughts and attitudes of the heart. Help us find peace and strength in your word as we navigate our lives. Help us not to become weary, but to find hope in you. You will be our God, and we will be your people. In the precious name of Christ we pray. Amen. Thank you, guys. Have a nice night.
Thank you.
Next speaker is John Palmer.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, all. First, I would truly like to recognize Jody and congratulations. Looking forward to working with you in the future. Second, I was here 2 weeks ago and we talked about algae. And I probably rubbed a few people wrong. But the nice thing was, Tuesday they came out and cleaned up the algae. That was great. The bad thing is, it's back. As bad, if not worse than it was 2 weeks ago. So I believe that's the developer's problem, and the developer needs to be held accountable on that. It's not the city's responsibility. It's generated from the Uplands project and falling into the city's right-of-way. So I hope we can get that addressed. Next, I would like to talk about agenda item 11C, the second reading of the groundwater. I know you were told everything's safe and fine and dandy. I received 3 PDF files from Heather Ostetter from the city, more than 100 pages about that particular project and the pollution. It's well above the limits set forth by the state of Colorado. There are, what's the plastic, PFAS detected up there. I really think that you should table that particular thing tonight and look at these documents that Heather provided me. They're not what it seems to be, not the way it's portrayed. It's a bad deal. There was no testing done down at the school that they supposedly claim. I don't see any of that in the report. So again, if you're looking out for the children, the pollution, we need to really look at that 100+ pages and 3 PDF files. If you'd like, I can direct them or get them sent to you, but I think it's something that you really should look at before approving that on the second reading. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Kyra Alexander.
Welcome.
Thank you. So my name is Kyra Alexander. I live in Westbrook, and I'm requesting that you guys withdraw from the IGA. People can't recreate out in Rocky Flats. That's crazy. That is actually crazy. So I request you guys to withdraw immediately from the IGA. People can't go out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Brittany Cole.
Welcome.
Hi.
So my name's Brittany Cole. I grew up in Westbrook as well, and I'm here to also request you guys to withdraw from the IGA and all funding for Rocky Flats. I am a mom of 1-year-old twins, and to me it's inhumane, or dare I say evil, to continue doing this to the public health. I think it's pretty obvious with what everyone's saying. I don't understand why we would even consider profits over the health of my children or the rest of Westminster. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Greg Alexander.
Welcome.
Thank you. So I'll make this brief. I came to the last meeting, my first city council meeting ever, and I think for the most part I've lived in the area for almost 22 years. And I just, for the most part, just let you all handle all the city issues and read the minutes and see what happened after the fact. I think with the Rocky Flats issue, it's very pertinent to come out and be here. And I think with all the evidence that's been presented to all of you, I know you guys have listened to a ton of it. You guys have had people come every meeting for months and talk about the risks and the dangers. And when I see all this and I hear all this, I think about the fact that I'm not hearing anybody get up saying this is a great idea, we should be doing this, we should be out there plowing through and digging in the dirt and building things. All the evidence and everything that's been brought in front of you is stop doing this is not a good idea, please withdraw. And when I hear that and see that, I just think about, what's driving this is other municipalities, government agencies that have other interests, developers. There's a lot of things being driven here that aren't from the residents. And if they are, they're not coming up to speak about this saying, hey, this is a great idea, we should be doing this. So I just wanted to come to front of you one more time, because it's my second city council meeting in my life ever, to say, please go with option 2 and please withdraw.
Thank you.
Jeff Geip, are you present? That's all the speakers.
Thank you. That brings us to the city manager's report.
Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, thank you very much for the opportunity to give a brief report tonight. First, I would like to thank all the members of our community who came to speak. Staff listens, City Council listens, so we do appreciate you very much coming tonight to express to us your thoughts. First item up is tonight's agenda. I just want to give a recap. This is not the full agenda, but for those participating tonight, we do have a consent agenda next. That's 6 items. 5 of those have been removed from consent, so we will have 1 item on consent, and then each of the next 5 will be dealt with separately. Next up will be direction on the Rocky Mountain Greenway Trail Crossings Intergovernmental Agreement, and we heard a number of speakers on that topic tonight. That will be followed by 3 second readings of 3 different items, and then a post-meeting this evening in the room next door in the boardroom, which is a follow-up on the proposed 2025 budget. Next item. And just before, also following will be 2 executive session items following the budget session. With respect to a city update, I have a couple of very exciting updates to provide. For you, Westminster won 5 National Communications Awards recently. The Savvy Award winner for video, and that was for the Police Unity Tour in 2023. Savvy Award winner in publications, nominated for Best in Show Diamond Award, that was for Westie Magazine. Silver Circle Award in publications for our water quality report. We received Award of Excellence in Graphic Design for our Westminster snowplow decals, and Award of Excellence in Photography for our Westminster Community in Focus efforts. So congratulations and thank you to the team. That's a lot of awards in one round. Next slide, please. This is a reiteration of a very successful reopening of our swim and fitness center. That was a grand reopening held on September 12th. 360 guests celebrated that reopening with us. That was also the 50th anniversary of the Swim and Fitness Center, so a very important date for the community. The center is now completed and open for business, and that includes improved ADA access and expanded services and programs for all ages and interests. And if you haven't gone to check out our new Swim and Fitness Center, please do. It's remarkable. You won't recognize it. I didn't recognize it at first. It's completely new and completely different. Next slide, please. I also do want to highlight a successful event that was held by our fire department, and that was our inaugural flashover fire camp. This was this past weekend, and the fire department hosted its first ever flashover fire camp for women from ages 16 to 20. The participants learned and practiced firefighting skills during the event, and we are now planning this as an annual event. So hats off to our fire department professional staff for coming up with and hosting this event. It was very successful. Next slide, please. This is where we are in the budget process. So heading into tonight's discussion a little bit later this evening, we are moving our way through the milestone steps. So tonight being September 23rd is the proposed budget amendment for City Council, and you'll review those tonight and give staff direction on how to proceed and finalize the budget for the first reading, which is on October 14th, and then the second reading required by statutory law will have to happen on October 28th, and that's the second reading of the budget. That adopts the budget for 2025, which goes into effect on January 1st. Next slide, please. Things to know, so this is upcoming. Tuesday this week, the Planning Commission meeting is canceled, so no Planning Commission meeting this week. On Wednesday, September 25th this week, we do have an Environmental Advisory Board meeting proceeding that starts at 6:30, and that's right here at City Hall in the Pikes Peak Conference Room. On Thursday, two things of note: the Big Dry Creek Steam Bank Restoration Open House is at 5 o'clock. That's 5 to 7 p.m., and that begins at the City Park Recreation Center. We also have a Special Permits and License Board meeting, a special hearing date of 6 to 8 p.m. at the City Council chambers, so right here in this room. Next Monday, I will note for everybody, it is the 5th Monday of the month, and there is no City Council meeting. So I'm sorry to disappoint some of our folks, but we will not be meeting in this room next Monday night. Next slide, please. So in 2 weeks, so this is the Monday after next, Wednesday, the week of the Monday after next. So that week there is a council meeting on Monday, October 7th. I do want to flag a meeting on October 2nd, which is a Special Permits and License Board meeting. That's 6 o'clock here at Council Chambers. And then just to give some insight into the City Council study session for October 7th, we will be looking at the presentation of a concept plan for Orchard Park Place senior housing. And we'll also be discussing City Council's positions on the 2024 ballot measures. Next slide, please. As always, you can contact me at the City Manager's office. My direct phone number is 303-658-2003, and my email, jandrews@westminsterco.gov. And you can follow us on any one of the city's 4 social media platforms, which are located here and very easy to find on our website. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Any questions of City Manager? I see none. That brings us to City Council comments. Councilor Azadi, do you have anything?
Hi, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
I just wanted to give staff a big thanks for the meeting we had with residents and the Sustainability Center last week. I think that was a good step forward and something we should be doing a lot more often. I love that. Thanks.
Anyone else? Councilor Camelia?
Yes, I've got a few different things. Also, thank you for that meeting on the sustainability tour. I think that was quite effective. We had some really good discussions with the stakeholders involved in that issue. So I think we are making big strides to move forward on the issues there. I will save my thoughts around the Greenway Trail when we get to that issue this evening. I just wanted to give another reminder on the NMA, the North Metro Arts Alliance Gala that's coming up. I think it's November 9th. I just wanted to say thank you to all the councilors who supported sponsoring that event. Thank you so much. And then a quick update on the DRCOG meeting that we had last week. I did send out notes, but for folks' awareness here, there was discussion around the ballot measure that's coming up this November's election around RTD Tabor vote. And so we decided to table that vote, and they will call a special meeting for our next work session, and I think it's going to be October 2nd, and that's for Mayor Pro Tem, just so you know that if you can't attend that, that work session will now be a special meeting for us to vote there. or if you're there, you'll vote. And I had a meeting last week with Representative Pedersen, and in that talked about some of the issues that we've seen come up for discussion around RMMA. And I brought up the issues that we've heard from residents concerning the noise and the lead, and most especially right now, the construction. What can we do for water testing? And so I just wanted to bring it up that I talked to her, and her recommendation was to forward an email to her staff so that they could follow up, and that piece I've done. And so hopefully there's more to come there, just keeping the conversation going. And so if folks want more there, I will follow up further. I haven't heard back, but just know that, I'm pursuing the opportunities I have to push that discussion forward. And I think that that's everything I have. Thank you so much.
Councillor Ireland?
As usual, I thank everyone, all the citizens that came out and spoke on different matters and made us aware of some things that we need to be aware of. I appreciate the work that some of you have done to bring some facts to life on Greenway Trail. And I want to tell Gary I'm sorry about your loss, and you were broken up about that, and I'm sorry about that. And thank you all again for coming out, and I appreciate those that have done it for their first or second time, and it gets easier. I'm not the public speaker of the year, so I appreciate you coming out. Thank you.
I want to talk about the Jazz Festival that was held down at 73rd and Lowell on property that has sat there for, I've given up on how many years. Anyway, it was when I was here last time as mayor. So they had a community event. It was well attended. We had all ages there. And Deputy City Manager Dorr was there. And it just was a great evening. Our economic development team had folks there mingling, making sure people were feeling welcome. They had dancers with the jazz folks that were just spectacular. And we have two great dancers amongst our council. Councillor Ireland and Councillor Hott got up and were brave to take the challenge to dance with some of the dancers. And then they had anybody that wanted to learn some of the ways to dance with the music that they were hearing. They gave a little lesson, and that was fun to watch. It just was great to watch people talking to people down there, reconnecting, laughing, just having a great time. It was a good first event. So I know people are saying, when's the next one? So that'll be fun to watch. Homecoming parade was Saturday for Westie High School. This is their homecoming week. They gave me an honor of being the Grand Marshal this year. Bradburn, some of the folks on Bradburn had their annual barbecue. I went to that. We had two of our officers there from the events crew and answered a ton of questions. They had great questions, and I have asked City Manager Andrews to work with Debbie Teeters and her neighbors because they had questions on ditches and who can do what and who's responsible, and I have no idea. So I told her I would connect, and City Manager Andrews has said he will make an appointment with them and find out what all their stuff is that they have questions about. And then the community that bought the Episcopal Church at 76th and Bradburn had their first event. If you haven't been by there, the first thing was the parking. They had tremendous parking. They had over 500 people there, and I was there from 12 to 1. I couldn't stay for the full 4 hours, but I was there for the beginning. And they're similar to the Hmong community in that they have, the Hmong community has clans, and I believe they called their different groups community groups. And so the group that was celebrating Saturday, their colors were black and red, beautiful outfits, just gorgeous. And they were explaining their traditions and what they were doing and why they were doing it. And so that center, I asked them if the building was occupied yet, and their answer was, "We've been to City Hall many times, Mayor." So I know that was a huge lift to get that building going and all of the problems that it had, which is some of the reasons why the church abandoned it and left. But great crowd. Like I said, they have put a huge parking lot there. They had it well down to a oiled machine of how it was all working. I don't think they disturbed any of the neighbors. There was some music outside, but it was midday, so hopefully everybody was awake. But it was great, so it was a good start. Okay, that brings us to consent agenda. Councilor DeMott?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve consent agenda item 9A.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item 9A. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilor Carmella?
Yes.
Councilor DeMott?
Yes.
Councilor Zadi?
Yes.
Councilor Hott?
Yes.
Mayor McNally?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Normello?
Yes.
Councilor Ireland?
Yes.
Motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
Thank you. That brings us to item 9B. Councilor DeMott?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to authorize the city manager to execute a contract amendment with Burns McDonnell Engineering Company, Inc. for engineering services during design of the Westminster Boulevard Raw Water Pipeline Extension capital project in the amount of $279,151 plus a contingency of $28,374, increasing the total authorized expenditure with the firm from previous not to exceed the amount of $1,789,537 to $2,096,603.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item 9B. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Ireland?
I will be voting no. I've said in the past that I'm against the new water treatment plant and where it's located, so I'd be hypocritical to vote for anything that has to do with it. Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Councilor Zadi?
Yes.
Councilor Hott?
Yes.
Mayor McNally?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Normello?
Yes.
Councilor Ireland?
No.
Councilor Carmella?
Yes.
Councilor DeMott?
Yes.
Motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
That brings us to item 9C. Councilor DeMott?
Move to authorize the city manager to execute contract with Mercurial Security Solutions LLC for an amount not to exceed $775,000 to provide security services at city facilities for a 12-month period beginning November 1st, 2024, renewable for up to 4 additional 12-month periods subject to annual appropriations.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item 9C. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Ireland?
So I have questions on this. This is an awful lot of money to be paying for security, so I would like to know how many man hours are we getting for $775,000 a year? Does anyone know the answer?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. I'm going to ask Jen Pren to come to the podium. She's with staff, and she will be able to help with our questions and answers tonight.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for the question, Councillor Ireland. So this contract is for 5 full-time security officers, as well as the security officers that cover all the city council events, special boards, those type of meetings like planning commission, and then also special events and other things that we may add throughout the year.
So are they salary-based employees, 5 of them?
It's per hour.
Or it's per hour, and how much per hour are they making?
This new contract will be $23 an hour for a guard, $24 an hour for the supervisor.
Okay, great, thank you.
Roll call, please.
Councillor Hott,
Yes.
Mayor McNally,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Normella,
Yes.
Councillor Ireland,
Yes.
Councillor Carmella,
Yes.
Councillor Demott,
Yes.
and Councillor Azadi.
Yes.
That brings us to item 9D. Oh, sorry.
Motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
Sorry. That brings us to item 9D.
Sorry, pardon, 7-0 vote. My apologies.
That's okay. Councillor Demott?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to authorize city manager to execute a construction contract with low bidder T2 Construction, Inc. in the amount of $464,444 for construction of outdoor classroom at Irving Street Park, plus a 10% contingency in the amount of $46,444 for the total authorized expenditure amount not to exceed $510,888.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item 9D. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Ireland?
So my concern is with this, I understand this part got burnt down. And I was looking at the plan, and we have fabric cells on some of the areas. I don't think that is going to last, like it can get burnt again. So is there any other material we can use for that instead of having it burn up again by whoever burned it up before? Anyway, I don't know what other flammable things we're using out there, but I noticed that it had the canopies. Anyone want to say anything about that?
Councillor, thank you for the question. I'm looking at staff, and I don't think that we have an answer tonight. So what we'll do is we'll go back and have a look at the design and the material selection, and see if there can be something done for making it more fire retardant. Or
I just don't want to have to replace it again. I don't think it's the taxpayers want to either. All right, thank you.
Roll call, please.
Mayor McNally,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Normella,
Yes.
Councillor Ireland,
No.
Councillor Carmella,
Yes.
Councillor Demott,
Yes.
Councillor Azadi,
Yes.
Councillor Hott.
Yes.
Motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
That brings us to item 9E. Councillor Normella? I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem?
I move to authorize the city manager to execute a development agreement for multifamily housing rehabilitation and preservation under the Westminster Community Development Block Grant with Maker Housing Partners in an amount not to exceed $735,000 for significant rehabilitation work needed to keep the Village of Greenbrier Apartments located at 8290 North Federal Boulevard structurally safe and in service to qualified low and moderate income residents for a minimum of 20 years.
Councillor Demott?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item 9E. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Ireland?
So this is for rehabilitation of these 2 apartment complexes. I want to know how old they are and how often we rehabilitate them. And I understand that Adams County, at least the first one, is the one responsible for running it. Is that Maker?
Yes, ma'am. Hi, Stephanie Troller,
Welcome.
Economic Development Manager. Both the projects, item E and F, were built in the mid-50s. And what happens with these projects is to keep the affordability down, that they have to defer a lot of maintenance. So they don't get to make a lot of the investments back in. This, the Housing Lift Program, this is our second year working with nonprofits and with apartments that are already deeply affordable to bring those buildings back up and to keep that safe and affordable housing for residents at low and moderate incomes.
Do the developers of these projects, are they totally out of the seen now and they're run by Adams County or what? Because why are we giving subsidies to developers over and over and over as taxpayers?
So I would have to get back to you on the exact date that Maker Housing bought this development. But when they did buy it, they realized some of the sewer infrastructure, water and wastewater, was failing. They had subpar construction materials in it, and that's why it's a health and safety concern and why we need to.
So where do these block grants come from?
So the CDBG block grants come from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD.
Is it federal?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So how can we use those funds? Anyway, is there certain things we can do with it? Like, we can rehabilitate this, but what else could we do with the money?
So in order to use these federal funds, they have to meet a national objective, providing safe and affordable housing to low moderate incomes, removal of blight and slum, or in an emergency situation. Additionally, staff works with HUD. We give them a consolidated plan every 5 years, and we submit an annual action plan, which council passed in May.
Okay.
That highlights how we're going to be spending these funds.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm just hoping that as we move forward, I mean, I really love the ability that we have with the CDBG funds to do these rehabilitation grants. I'm just really wanting to see us extend the deed restriction further than 20 years. You know, I think the industry in the Front Range is moving more towards permanent, but at minimum, I'd really like us to get to 30. Is there a reason why we were with just 20 for these?
Hello again, Stephanie Troller. Thank you for the question. You know, there's a couple different reasons, and we've been working with developers to understand what is an appropriate period to add to the affordability. You know, after 20 years, they often have to refinance. So they can, in Maker's case, they are refinancing, so they're pulling out equity. And with additional long-term covenants, it makes it harder for projects to perform when they can't pull out that equity. So, and also HUD, we are putting in, HUD only requires 5 years. We're putting in an additional 15 years on it.
Okay, I'd still pressure our developers to do more.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Normella,
Yes.
Councilor Ireland,
No.
Councilor Carmela,
Yes.
Councilor Demott,
Yes.
Councilor Zadi,
Yes.
Councilor Hott,
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
That brings us to item 9F. Councilor Demott?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to authorize the city manager to execute a development agreement for multifamily housing rehabilitation and preservation under Westminster Community Development Block Grant with Foothill Regional Housing in an amount not to exceed $735,000 for a significant rehabilitation work needed to keep the Redwood Village Apartments located at 5360 West 78th Place structurally safe and in service to qualified low and moderate income residents for a minimum of 20 years.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item 9F. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilor Ireland,
No.
Councilor Carmelia,
Yes.
Councilor Demott,
Yes.
Councilor Zadi,
Yes.
Councilor Hott,
Yes.
Mayor McNally,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Normella.
Yes.
Motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
That brings us to item 10, new business. Direction on the Rocky Mountain Greenway Trail Crossings Intergovernmental Agreement. We are to hold a discussion and give staff direction. Councilor Camellia?
Can we do a 5-minute break before we get into
Sure.
this?
We'll take a break. Okay, we'll start with item 10, direction on the Rocky Mountain Greenway Trails Crossing Intergovernmental Agreement. Mayor Pro Tem?
So I think it would be helpful if staff can provide an update on the bridge construction, just to set the basis, the existing conditions for us.
Welcome.
Mayor Pro Tem, thank you. Tomas Mischler will be up at the podium tonight to answer any questions on this memo.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and councilors. The project has begun their setting up the necessary mobilization for the project. So if you drive by on Indiana, you will see a construction trailer, some equipment, and some rebar and other materials. My understanding is that they're beginning the project with construction of a bridge internal to the site going over Woman Creek, and then they'll proceed with the installation of the bridge over Indiana, and then the I believe the state or the project is now set that the bridge will be installed before the construction of the underpass, but I'm not exactly positive about that. But they have mobilized and they're ready to continue with the project.
I do have, I'll just keep going with. I know in the past when we spoke with the project manager from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, he said that we would, or they would be willing to take additional construction precautions. What, if any, are we aware of that they're doing, or how are we in communication with them regarding logistics?
I'm not aware of any additional precautions that they're taking beyond the air monitoring that's part of our agreement with them. I know that they also have all of the stormwater precautions are there on site ready to be installed. So, but I'm not aware of any additional precautions on top of the normal plus the air monitoring.
How would we go about speaking with them to establish some greater precautions on the construction?
Yeah, we can certainly reach out to our contact at Fish and Wildlife, and he's the senior ranger in charge of both the Arsenal and Rocky Flats, and I can certainly ask him what the possibilities are.
Also, as I recall, just help me remember, the workers that'll be out there will have some type of detection device that they'll be wearing for radioactive. Is that correct? Am I making that up?
I had not heard that. I'm sorry, but I can again also verify
no,
that. I've not heard that.
Was that like some delightful dream I had?
Mayor Pro Tem, I don't know that staff can speak to that in terms of the contractors that the project has retained. I don't think we have that information.
Okay,
well, in terms of the standards and Mr. Mischler's response, anything that we do would be of a collaborative nature, because the bridge, both footings are not on City of Westminster property, so the bridge itself is being installed not on city property. So the most that staff can do is influence through collaboration on that aspect of this project. Our lands is a different story, but with respect to the bridge itself, it's not, none of it is on city property.
Although we do have our funding in it, so we do have a stake in that if we continue with the funding.
That's correct.
Okay.
Anyone else? Councilor Carmelia?
I'll just say that for our vote tonight, no matter what we do, we cannot undo what previous decision makers have done. And so I want to set the stage with saying that for those who haven't followed this whole history so far, a lot of that trail has already been built, right? And so I want to level set where we're at today. And so when we're asked to not build the trail has already been built, right? And what we're talking about tonight is withdrawing from an intergovernmental agreement with other stakeholders involved in this issue. And we're also talking about, does Westminster participate in building the last piece of the trail, the 0.4 miles of the trail that have not yet been built? And so that's really where we stand. And as has been previously mentioned, that less than half of a mile of trail is already a socially developed trail, right? There are two parts of the trail, and folks will likely cross, and they are already crossing through this, no matter what our decision is tonight. So I want to say that a lot of these decisions were made before, I don't know if any of the councilors, I was going to say before most of ours, but probably all of our time here, by stakeholders that were, prior councils and at the state and county level, right? So a lot of these decisions that affect our decision tonight have already been made with or without our input. But it's what do we do now with what's in front of us, right? And so I just want to say that the significance of what we decide tonight really is not so much in the physical difference of what is already out there, but it's more us making a stand and setting a precedent for the power that municipalities have for protecting their residents and protecting their better welfare and standing up in the face of decisions that have possibly already been made. But it's really just saying that whatever we decide tonight, it's about showing in the face of history where we stand on this issue and saying, do we agree with the decisions that were already made, or can we publicly boycott the decisions that were made, and what can we do now about it, and how do we increase education, awareness? How do we, with our decisions tonight, do we take the trails off the maps, for example? Do we decide to post signage on our websites and on our trail maps that say that this is an area of concern? These are all steps we can take, and I believe that we've discussed likely taking, and I think we will. But again, it doesn't undo what's already been done. Our decision tonight is really more of significant in its history, in that we're saying we have the power as a municipality to take a stance one way or another on this issue, because we are a home rule city, and this, I think that affects not just things around housing, but it also affects the decisions we make at the local level in all formats to protect our residents. So I have more to add in a moment about where I stand on it, but I just want to level set a little bit right there for folks who might be hoping that, there's no trail built. Well, guess what? The trail is built. But what do we do about it now? So to that point, I'll add a little bit more to just say, what do we do about it now, right? The construction of the bridge is being built. That means there's dust being kicked up. We've already heard how harmful and damaging that can be to our public. I have thrown out some suggestions. I don't know if these have all come back to council yet, but I've asked for cost estimates for soil stabilization, and so I think that we're working on that. I got a call from our director today asking for more input around that. The idea there is I propose that at least, and again, this is not on our land, it's Jeffco land, but we can ask them to do that, and we can do it on our land. For cost estimates around adding soil, 4 to 6 inches of it around the bridge, we can do that 6 feet out, and we can do it 1 or 2 feet on either side of Indiana, except that is not our land. And we can do it around the Greenway Trail piece. And then we can lay down native grasses, and native grasses have roots that are 4 to 6 inches long. Those can help stabilize the soil further. And then you can water. We can water it weekly for the next, foreseeable future. How about 3 months, right? What can we do to really try to reduce the amount of erosion that's happening, try to reduce the effects of the wind impact? We've saw pictures, that was from last week, of the wind that's out there in the area, so we already know this is happening, and we already have the information to know how damaging the plutonium and all of the other toxic substances out there are. There's a long list. So I just want to say there's actions we can take. We're looking into those, and those are some of the items that I propose. And I don't think that all of that needs to be tied into our decision tonight, but I want folks to know that we've taken a lot of time on this issue, and I think all of us have thought very deeply and seriously about what we can do. And really, it's about mitigation at this point. What do we do to prevent further harm from the harm that's already been done?
Councillor Hott?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Carmelia, for explaining where we are at in the process. So I'm just going to be really quick. I always vote my values when I'm up here. I need to be able to sleep at night, and public health and safety are very important to me. Thank you.
Councillor Ireland?
I just want to say that I'm upset this ever happened because I've lived here for almost 38 years, and I am just amazed that our government would build such a thing for whatever profit the government is getting off of this that is doing this. So I am going to vote my conscience too, but also I think that the public, we need to quit erasing our history in this country. And this is one of the things that we're erasing. We need to have signage that tells the truth. And we have watered down what happened there, and it's not okay for the history, for our children. And we're doing this all over the country, and it's not okay to not have our history. And it's not just about plutonium, it's about other things in our history. And so I'm advocating strong signage for whatever is already out there. And I think the dog park has plutonium in it too, and I think it needs signage also. That might cut down on the dog park. Maybe we won't have to spend so much money on the dog park, but there is plutonium there too, and I'm tired of the hiding. I'm tired of what has happened with our government, and in so many ways that they're not being honest with the citizens of this country. And so I will be voting my conscience.
Mayor Pro Tem?
One, thank you, everybody, for sharing how you feel, and thank you, Councillor Carmelia, for setting the stage. I'm a little tired, so I was unable to set it as well. And I appreciate your thoughts on some specific measures to counteract what we already know is going on in terms of the bridge construction. So certainly I would love to be able to carry that on, as I was mentioning earlier, that if there are some ways to just get some additional mitigation, I love those ideas that Councillor Carmelia had, but any others, any additional, I know we had some residents speaking to the potential for more consistent air quality reporting, so whatever additional reporting we might be able to get. For me, I think that there's enough doubt there that that this is an impactful and potentially harmful activity, that it's, for me, I don't feel safe in just kind of allowing things to occur as they are planned, and that's why I'm hoping that we can do whatever we can to share the doubt with other folks in terms of the education. I also am supportive of, we were given 4 options. Option 4 does actually not have us connect and complete the trail that goes from our existing end of trail to the bridge. I think that's also a statement that if we just kind of leave it, it provides signage, but also not connect, that's us not investing in the continued connection over to the Greenway Trail, and investing in encouraging people to take this. So that's where I'm sitting, is with option 4.
Councillor Demott?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a quick question for staff. We've heard a comment a couple times tonight from both the public and council members about profit and developers. I'm trying to make connection to what I've been told through many meetings. So is that who's I don't remember anybody actually making money off this. Quite frankly, it sounds like it's going to cost multiple governments money. So I'm trying to understand, is there a profit component of this or a developer? My understanding was this is mostly different government entities developing this at taxpayer cost.
That is correct. It's the first Superfund site. I'm not talking about the bridge, but the site itself. And there's been an enormous amount of public dollars poured into the site for cleanup and now for this bridge project. I do not know that there is no developer involved in this project that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and to chase that down a little bit more, when we hear developer, there's not any further development on these sites besides trails, is what was originally agreed on. Is that accurate? In the bridge?
I believe there's plans for a visitor center.
Okay.
So,
but not on Westminster property.
No, nothing's
Thank you.
planned.
I just want to make sure that I'm dealing off the right information. Councilor Camelia had brought up the fact that none of us were here when this decision was made because we weren't. There have been subsequent decisions that have been steered by decisions that were made back in 2016. So we are limited on what we can do. What I am most concerned about is making sure there's education. I've actually lived in the countryside neighborhood basically my whole life, as well as my parents still live there. Many of my neighbors worked at Rocky Flats. That community was kind of built off the fact that there were a lot of workers out there. It's a small city that the government was running under our nose. So I think it's very, very important that we do educate people, and if they're going to go out there, because reality is they are going to go out there. People are going out there, regardless of what we do here tonight. So I do think that it behooves us to make sure that we have very strong signage. I would also advocate that the website show the site and that exactly what it is. I know we've talked before about maybe not having it be on the website. I would not advocate for that because I feel like people are going to still go there, and I would rather them see in our trails that that is a place that potentially has danger for you, and so that they can make an educated decision if they decide to take that risk. In a free society, people take all sorts of risks that I wouldn't take with my safety or my health, but I want to make sure that we at least are educating folks. And I think throughout most of these options that are put forward, that is something that I've heard clear from council, and I just want to make sure that my desire is spoken, that we do those pieces above and beyond what we've already seen today from other government agencies.
Can I ask, people talked about if like the bridge, for whatever reason, we know it's going in, but what's happening right now with that connection not happening, do we have fencing coming down? Are they just going over the fence if they're crossing Indiana to get back to our trails?
There's a little bit of barbed wire out there. It's not the city of Westminster's barbed wire. That is Jefferson County's barbed wire. And then we have our standard wildlife-friendly open space 3-strand wire out there as well. I'm sure that there will be some removal of some of that fencing at some point, but certainly the barbed wire should come down. So.
And just because we were out there for the Who's Cats stuff, the part that is concrete, is that part of the Greenway?
It is not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure because so many of the different ability people are using that one. So I just wanted to know. Thanks. I too, as we've started all of this, have heard education, education, education. Some people didn't really seem to know about the history of this. So it tells me that, especially as the Rocky Flats stewardship group is dismantling and looking for where all of the records are going to be housed so people can access everything and understand what has happened out there over the last many years. That is the key crux thing, is so that nobody forgets, and that people can go and get their information and make their own decisions. The piece that I struggle with is back in 2016, we had a council that did say yes to this and did a partnership with other cities. Usually when you partner, and especially that far back, that money is looking at being used for what it's supposed to be used for. And when people decide to back out of that, it creates some issues for others. And I just think we need, it's only because we work with all of these entities. And I'd have to think if we were doing something and they were partnering with us and all of a sudden they start dropping out for I don't care what reason, it lays a burden on somebody else. So I never got a hold of anybody from that 2016 council. I've not heard anybody else say that they talked to them to know why they made the decision they did. But there lies elected group that made a decision, and I have some trouble going back and saying, well, take this piece out, take this piece out, don't do this, don't do that. So that's what I struggle with, because what I really hear everybody is saying, because the bridge is going in, the lawsuit, Mr. Frankel, has been rendered, and things have not been found to be as bad as some people want to make out the area. And people want us to join this, that, and the other thing when things like this are going on, and we're waiting for the laws to go through the right process, and they come out with their answers. Education is what I hear this council talking about, and I think there's lots of ways of doing it. Signs are, we're in control of the signs no matter who owns the bridge or whose land it's on. We still have say on what goes on those signs. In all of that open space, where the dog park is, where this trail's going to line up. So I would be for figuring out how we best figure and look and continue to work with the Rocky Flats group is dismantling in October, but they are working on where all of this, all the minutes, all of the meetings, everything, where that's going to be housed, and making sure we know that so we can have links to our website and continue to allow people to learn on their own and understand stuff. So that's where I'm sitting, but I'm just one person. Councilor Azadi?
Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So I agree with what everyone has said tonight. I'd like to start off by saying that a legal victory is not always a reflection of truth, right? And I think we all know what the truth has been in this area. Legacy contamination still presents a risk despite the surface level cleanup efforts. I think that we need to make sure we remember that thousands of pounds of plutonium still exist there underground. And the cleanup effort that occurred was only for the first 3 feet of soil in exchange for not having to remove any of the contamination below that point. I just want people to know this, and I keep repeating it, but it's important. because when we make this vote tonight, this is an environmental crisis. And yes, there's not much we can do. The trail is built, but there is a moral thing we can do. And I think we have a moral obligation to get out of this. So I will be voting tonight to withdraw from the IGA and decline to pay the city's local match. And I think we can use that money to do all of the signage and education that we've been talking about tonight.
Councillor Dumont?
To the comment that we just heard, I thought our funds were already expended.
Thank you for the question. Just confirming that, can give you a factual answer. We have been invoiced for a large share of the city's contribution. The city has appropriated these funds, and so according to the IGA, we are obligated to pay those if we continue to honor the terms of the IGA. Does that make sense?
Yep. I appreciate that clarification, because I mean that weighs into our decision as far as to the point that we've heard from a couple speakers, the fact that this agreement was put in place quite a while ago and that money's been reappropriated multiple budgets because it was marked for this purpose in an agreement with another group of government entities. So and I'm glad that somebody brought up, I was going to ask about the lawsuit, because that was brought up to us and asked by the public whether or not that lawsuit was still going. And my understanding is that lawsuit failed to stop the trail.
Thank you, Counselor. Yes, so the U.S. District Court denied the plaintiff's request for a preliminary injunction. They had sought for a court order to halt construction of the trail, and the court did not grant that request.
I appreciate that. I think that is that the findings of that lawsuit something in one of our packets for the public to be able to look at? Because I believe that, the scientific studies that they showed, believe them or not, but that's the scientific studies that were provided in that lawsuit said, that there wasn't, to the mayor's point, as much danger as people were asserting in that court case. So, and again, believe what you want about it, but I think at least so that we could point people to it because it's information that we got.
Counselor, yes, the court's order is a public record, and we can certainly add it to our packet.
I would appreciate that. I think it would be valuable for the public to be able to read that.
Councillor Carmelia?
I'll say that I too am struggling with the argument that you, Mayor, just brought forward, that we are bound to a pre-existing contract. I feel strongly we should honor our commitments as a city and preserve our relationships as we'll be working with our fellow stakeholders going forward. I just want to say this, however, is a case of unusual paramount and involves the health and safety of our community. I cannot undo what previous decision makers have done. I can, however, make a stand for what is so clearly the right thing to do. I want to emphasize again that this is a historical vote. In my mind, this might be the most significant vote I make on my tenure on council. As public comment this evening suggested, the decision here is significant, again, not in the physical difference it will make, but for setting precedent for our local municipalities taking a stance to protect the welfare of our residents. I also want to say that this issue is an excellent example of why we have different layers of government responsible and involved in decisions, because when one fails, another can come in to take a stance and put a stop to the action. I want to say at the city level, we are at our last layer of government beneath federal, state, and county, and yet we still have the power and authority to protect and preserve the welfare of our residents. I will vote to withdraw from the IGA. I will also be voting to add signage that clearly demonstrates the history and current hazards that I think we're all on board with, and to add symbols signifying the hazards on our physical and digital maps. And I was one of the counselors that asked to expand our options this evening from simply withdrawing from the IGA or simply staying in to option 4 that we see tonight, which is staying in the IGA and not completing Westminster's portion of the trail. I do believe this is one possible move we can make, but this is our opportunity to say that while the DOE has pushed decisions to normalize using this land by the public, we still are a city with the authority and responsibility to make our own decision today, despite all the previous historical decisions that have been made.
Anyone else? Councillor Hott?
Yes, I will also be voting to withdraw from the IGA, and I also would like more signage. Thank you.
I guess I want to make it clear that I'm voting to withdraw from the IGA also.
Somebody have a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we withdraw from the IGA.
I second that.
There's a motion to withdraw from the IGA and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I just had one.
Go ahead.
I struggle with the full withdrawal from the IGA, and it's more because this is something that we did commit to financially. I feel like we can potentially still maintain good communication with the other governmental agencies who are still going to be working out there. And by the fact, and also considering the fact that we've already appropriated the dollars, I am concerned about putting ourselves at risk, if there's any, legal risk for us to be in breach of the IGA. But if we're canceling it, maybe that's, that might be something to get clarification on. Sorry, I guess long story short, I'm not willing to cancel the IGA or withdraw from the IGA. I just, this is a project that has been committed to in terms of the construction of the bridge. It's underway. We've allocated dollars toward it. I feel like we still need to be in good communication with the other agencies to help get their cooperation in any additional monitoring or construction mitigation. I also believe strongly that I don't want people going into this site. Well, I'm not going to make the decision for them. That's why I think the educational component is important. And yeah, that's where I'm at. So I'll vote no on this, but know that it's not like a full no, as in I'm not supportive of us having the education and trying not to have people out there.
Councillor Dumont?
I am similar to the Mayor Pro Tem. I think that when a city signs a intergovernmental agreement, that is what it is. It's a legal agreement. And so I think that we're bound to that agreement as a city. We put forward a commitment to our partners. So I think that we're bringing some liability on the city if we pull out of that. I do also think that we have to work with our partners, and we're putting other elected officials who probably also weren't there to make these decisions in a bind. I think there are other solutions that were given to us here. Education is going to be critical no matter what, because people should know what they're deciding to risk. And again, this pre-society, if people want to take the risk, they're going to take the risk. Reality is that path is there. People are going there. And the other reality that I would point out is that the risks from Rocky Flats are going to be there no matter what for those of us in this community if they're there. That dust isn't going to kick up any less or more, in my mind, because of a trail out there. I mean, those pictures that we saw, that's Mother Nature. And that's why it's so damaging and dangerous for human beings to do things that are hazardous, such as what they did out at Rocky Flats years ago. So that is a risk that this community has no matter what. So I don't see how us doing this is going to change anything, but I do think the education component could. So that's where I'm at.
See no one else. Roll call, please.
Councilor Carmelo,
Yes.
Councilor Demott,
No.
Councilor Azadi,
Yes.
Councilor Hott,
Yes.
Mayor McNally,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Normella,
No.
Councilor Ireland,
Yes.
motion passes on a 4-3 vote.
Thank you. That brings us to old business. Item 11A, Councilor's Bill number 28. Councilor Demott.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to pass Councilor Bill number 28 on second reading, authorizing the city manager to execute a development agreement with Community Reach, Inc. in substantially the same form as attached for development of a proposed behavioral health facility, and authorizing the acting city manager. Can we just say city manager? I feel like we should just say city manager now. And
Yes.
authorizing the city manager to finalize and execute a development assistance agreement and stipulate use tax agreement without requiring further approval from city council.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass item 11A, Councilor's Bill number 28. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
I have a comment. I will not be voting for this. I think they do a good cause, but they have $47 million in assets, and their CEO is making $500,000. So there's no reason for the taxpayers to be giving them $450,000. No.
I know you say that every time that this comes up. It really isn't our business. It is the business of Community Reach's board, how much they pay their CEO. That is not our business. And I always cringe that it's mentioned and how much that just isn't our business. So I needed to say something this time. Roll call, please.
Councilor Demott,
Yes.
Councilor Azadi,
Yes.
Councilor Hott,
Yes.
Mayor McNally,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Normella,
Yes.
Councilor Ireland,
No.
Councilor Carmelia.
Yes.
Vote passes 6-1 vote.
That brings us to Councilor's Bill number 29. Councilor Demott.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to pass Councilor Bill number 29 on second reading, providing for a supplemental appropriation of funds in the amount of $1,780,000 to the 2024 budget of General Capital Improvements Fund 92nd and Eaton Street Improvements account, contingent upon Westminster Economic Development Authority's approval to allocate the funds.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass Councilor's Bill number 29. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilor Azadi,
Yes.
Councilor Hott,
Yes.
Mayor McNally,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Normella,
Yes.
Councilor Ireland,
No.
Councilor Carmelia,
Yes.
Councilor Demott.
Yes.
Motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
That brings us to Councilor's Bill number 30. Councilor Demott.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to pass Council Bill number 30 on second reading to prohibit withdrawal or use of groundwater in the area where residual groundwater contamination exists from the former Shaw Heights dry cleaner site located at 3681 West 88th Avenue, Westminster, Colorado.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass Councilor's Bill number 30. I'll just ask City Manager Andrews. It was mentioned tonight, somebody at the podium sharing 100 pages of information.
Yeah, I can ask our Director of Public Works and Utilities, Mr. Paul Knippel. The staff person's name that was referenced is our stormwater in-house professional. So Mr. Knippel can perhaps provide some additional information.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Paul Knippel, Director of Public Works and Utilities, excuse me. Heather Otterstetter has reviewed the reports and prepared the agenda memo. We can certainly provide that information to the council that Mr. Palmer referenced earlier. We've gone back and looked at this. There's been at least 4 studies done on this site. The property owner's been working with the CDPHE since 2021 on a corrective action plan. That plan is that involved 47 on-site testing, sampling holes in the ground, and 14 of those are in addition to the 47 on-site, 14 off-site. They feel like they have it characterized. The soil is clean. There's a residual level of the solvent contaminant in the groundwater at a depth of around 30 feet. It's just above the cleanup threshold. There's been an injection of another compound that will neutralize that over time. They've had some evidence that that has occurred, so that the thinking will be that it won't be there forever. And so the property, the state is willing to issue or has issued a conditional closure that is contingent upon the local government assigning an overlay on the land that prohibits any withdrawal of groundwater, just as an added precaution. But other than that, they consider the site to be clean once they have this additional protection on top of it that would be affected by your passage of the ordinance tonight. But we can provide that information. It's a long answer to your questions.
Mayor Pro Tem.
So with respect to what the limitations are for the site, there were concerns from a resident regarding environmental justice issues of locating residential development on this site. I know I've worked in the past with sites that have been restricted to only allow for commercial or industrial development due to ground contamination. Can you speak to and maybe distinguish between the non-accessing of groundwater and sort of that next level of not allowing residential development?
So the residential threshold, to my understanding, is the highest threshold that you can get to. It's actually the lowest contaminant level. So you don't, for an industrial or commercial site, that allowable contaminant level may be higher. For a residential, it's lower, and that's what was sought, and that's what we've cleaned up to. So the contaminant level needs to be, that's what they're trying to hit. And right now, in some of these places, it's just above that residential level. It's not as high as what would limit it to a commercial level. It's a little bit higher than what would limit it to residential, if that makes sense. So there are different thresholds by which certain uses of the land would be allowed, and that threshold is much is a higher bar essentially for a residential, and they're not quite at that bar yet with what's in the groundwater. It's close, but it's close enough that the state will allow residential development on the site subject to these restrictions. So this is just the added additional restriction on top of that.
When development is proposed, are developers or property owners required to do an environmental analysis on top of the this study? That's like if a residential development were proposed here, would they have to do like a level 2 environmental, or what would they?
What has happened on this, and there was a level 1 environmental assessment that triggered this. So there was probably lending involved, and so there was due diligence. And when this environmental assessment was done, they discovered that there had been some contamination. And so in the future, as development proposals come in, We have mechanisms internally in our tracking system that would catch this ordinance and make sure there's no groundwater wells being drilled in there. And in addition to that, the state actually has the authority over drilling of groundwater wells. So there's a couple of added protections in here that development wouldn't necessarily be allowed to drill a well. And further, to your question about would a future environmental assessment be required, I think that depends. If there's lending involved, there may be, and then it would find that there was a conditional closure, but then it would also find that we have satisfied that closure and it would be released. If there's not lending involved and there's cash transactions, then it's just up to the buyer, and there may not necessarily be an environmental assessment done. So it just sort of depends on the level of due diligence that is required at the time of a future sale. But in any event, we're going to have, we potentially would have an ordinance in place, we would have mechanisms in the city's tracking system, and you would have a state that this would be of record. So prevent the...
So just one more question, sorry. So because this has a restriction on it, would there be ongoing monitoring past the point, like let's say they have a clear enough reading where it says, okay, you're at that threshold now where residential is acceptable. Is there any monitoring past that point?
Not that I'm aware of. No, I'm not aware of any subsequent modeling. I think they are testing. So with this, residential development would be allowed now. So there would, but I don't know that there's any subsequent modeling. I believe as a closure that it would be, the matter would be considered closed.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Councillor Hott,
Yes.
Mayor McNally,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nermello,
Yes.
Councillor Ireland,
No.
Councillor Carmelia,
Yes.
Councillor Damat,
Yes.
Councillor Zadi.
Yes.
Motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
We will now move into post-meeting, which includes the presentation, followed by a WIDA session and a City Council executive session. Mr. Frankel, could you please read the titles for the executive sessions? I will then poll the City Council to confirm their willingness to convene an executive session, reminding us that we have already done a vote that Councilor Azadi can be included in the executive sessions.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes. So as you've noted, there are 2 executive sessions proposed this evening. The first executive session is for WIDA, and excuse me while I pull up the title. The WIDA executive session is to discuss strategy and progress on negotiations related to the Aspire Project Development Agreement between the city and Sherman Associates and the possible sale, trade, or exchange of property interests, and to provide direction to the authority's negotiators as authorized by Westminster Municipal Code 111.3C4 and 7, as well as Colorado Revised Statute 246402, 4A and E1.
Okay, I will ask Councilor Azadi to start us so that I don't forget you. Are you willing to go into executive session and keep what is done confidential?
Obi Azadi, yes.
Claire Carmelia, yes.
Dave Damat, yes.
Nancy McNally, yes.
Sarah Nermella, yes.
Amber Hot, yes.
Christine Ireland, yes.
Okay. It is 9:29. This meeting is closed. Oh, go ahead.
If I could, Mayor, before you adjourn the
Yep.
regular portion of our meeting, there is a second executive
Oh,
session
sorry.
that's proposed, and that would conclude the evening for you. And that is an executive session discussion of a personnel matter. discussion of next steps in the annual review process for the city attorney and the presiding judge pursuant to Westminster Municipal Code Section 1113C1 and Colorado Revised Statute 246402-4F1.
Okay, same drill. Counselor Azadi?
Toby, is that a yes?
Claire Carmelia, yes.
Dave Demott, yes.
Nancy McNally, yes.
Sarah Nermella, yes.
Amber Hot, yes.
Christine Ireland, yes.
Okay, it is 9:30. We are adjourned, and we will move into the other room for budget amendment discussions. Okay. We have our post-meeting presentation on the budget. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Staff is here to follow up on the feedback we received last Monday night regarding the 2025 proposed budget and some potential amendments. I hope you were able to read through the staff report because staff spent some rapid hours last week putting together some responses to be published with the agenda. So I just want to quickly review where we are in the process. So we started, well, actually, in my mind, we started with an after-action report in November of last year even, as we prepared. But then on March 4th of this year, we worked on our development guidelines and calendar with everyone. And now we've moved all the way over to step number 8 on the right there in September. So we're fairly far along. This is really one of the last moments to receive feedback on this budget. We're rapidly approaching that deadline of first reading on October 14th. And with no meeting next week, our staff is working to prepare the final documents already for approval on October 14th. So we're looking for any final direction this evening. Apologize. One note that I wanted to mention. To get to this process, we received from you all 29 council priorities, 66 community requests. We responded to 70 council questions. Then following last week, we worked on 5 amendments that we'll discuss this evening, and we answered an additional 9 questions. So there's been quite a bit of feedback and a cooperative process as we've moved along in our collaborative budget development here. And here we go. I'm going to pass it over to Aaron Ferreter, our Policy and Budget Administrator, to start with the first budget amendment for the evening.
Good evening, Aaron Ferreter, Policy and Budget Administrator. First, just wanted to say thank you very much for your feedback and collaboration during this process. It's been tremendous to get us to this point, and we'll be going through 5 amendments that we heard from last week to get your feedback and direction on. First one is Budget Amendment A, to increase resources for people experiencing homelessness in the community. The requests that we heard were to increase our homeless navigators, to provide additional options for laundry services for those that are unhoused, and to provide shelter options at 32 degrees. After talking with our experts, Kate Sparbeck and her team within Parks, Recreation, and Libraries, with her connections in the community and her regional collaborations, staff is proposing to invest $1 million, which would include 2 new homeless navigators. Those navigators, as well as the other navigators within our navigator team, to provide vouchers for laundry services of choice for those people experiencing homelessness who are unable to utilize the mobile services provided Adams County, or the new services that will be provided through the Westminster Elks Club sponsored services, which begin next week. Additionally, to sustain community services at the MAC, staff are proposing to provide vouchers, hotel vouchers, to people experiencing homelessness with ties to Westminster and who are actively working with the homeless navigators or other service providers in the region on nights when temperatures drop below 32 degrees, as well as continuing to fund emergency sheltering options when temperature or nighttime temperatures fall below 0 degrees. The one thing we want to make sure that we are clear in this conversation, we will not be compromising the $1 million to support the navigation centers that are still being built. We are using those dollars now to be able to invest immediately into our community. However, when that ask is made of us, we will be prepared to invest $1 million still within those navigation centers.
Councilor Demott?
How? Where are you going to get the $1 million from? That's my big question on this. Well, I have 2 big questions. One, It's like, I understand we have the money now, but we've made a commitment that I am dedicated to, because I think it's important to have a center that has all the wraparound services, which is what we really could benefit from in our community. So I'll hit that point first, and then I'll ask my second question.
So the $1 million that we currently have for the center, we are using those dollars now to immediately invest in our community, knowing that when that ask comes, whether we need to dip into reserves or make other adjustments in our capital projects or other operations to come up with that $1 million, we will do so.
Okay. I'm uncomfortable with that. We've been asked to dip into that $1 million before, and if council majority wants to change that, that's up to the majority. However, I know at least some of us were on council when we said we didn't want to do that because this money has been allocated for that for some time. I guess my other problem with this is I don't see, there's two sides of the homeless situation. There's the more empathy and human side, which I think we're all certainly want to do, but there's also the enforcement side. So I get as many concerns from community members about making sure that we're enforcing camping laws and assuring that we're keeping people's public property safe. The homeless issue it's a multifaceted issue. So I'm not wholly against us increasing resources to it, but I'd like to see more balance. And this is just, adding more to one side. So, was there any talk with staff about the enforcement side of the homeless challenges that we have as a community?
I may be able to help a little bit with that one, Counselor. So the homeless navigators do co-respond with all calls related to homeless issues on city property, so parks and open space and city facilities. So these resources in this recommendation will assist greatly with those responses, and that is the first contact point for the continuum of compassion, which then opens up the proceedings if in whichever direction the individual chooses to go in terms of accessing resources through the navigators or not accessing those resources. And then the other part that you're describing, that process kicks in. With respect to the private property issues, those are handled through the enforcement arms of the city, which is code enforcement and our police. But our navigators are there to assist with the entire population, whatever property that they're on. So in that sense, these resources would assist in both situations.
Understood, but did we talk to code and police about what extra resources they might need?
Outside of the co-responder program and investing some of the opioid settlement dollars in order to increase and adding an additional co-responder, that's where we focused our conversations on, is connecting with resources, not necessarily focusing initially on the enforcement side.
Understand. For me, though, it's two sides of the coin. We have to be able to address both, in my mind. The other concern I have is about being able to actually staff those. So, we put money aside for this. Do we think we can staff them? I recall in the past couple of years, we had a hard time keeping those folks in those spots because was that the homeless co-responders or was it? Yeah, it was the homeless co-responders, I believe, because of just the stress on the job. I thought we were having a hard time keeping those positions filled.
Homeless navigators.
Do we have Tomas here?
Could you repeat the question, please?
So I don't know if it was last year or the year before, my recollection was that you were having a hard time keeping those positions as they were staffed, what we already had allocated for FTEs for the homeless navigators. And I recall you citing a lot of just stress on that job and us having a hard time keeping people in those seats. So if we had additional FTE allocations, do you think you're going to be able to fill the positions, and are we still having those same challenges in the ones we have?
So I will say that it is a challenging job. Navigating, working with that population and helping them find permanent housing is, I'd say by definition, very challenging. I believe that we are really successful in identifying really good people to take those positions. It's just going to be one of those jobs that is very hard to sustain the same person long-term. I've just seen that the folks stay as long as they can, and then they move on to something else. But we have, the amazing Kate Scarbeck does a great job of managing that resource for us and finding really great people, and she's got so many connections into the entire region with the individuals working in this field that I feel very confident that we'll be able to fill those positions as they open up.
I'll stand by what I said. I'm not really in favor of us reallocating this money in this way. That those funds were going to go to a different level of government that should be serving human service needs, and we were, allocating that. So I understand the tactic to move that money around. That makes me uncomfortable. So I'm not supportive of this.
Mayor Pro Tem and then Councilor Ireland.
I think I understand the approach with moving the $1 million sort of around a bit. I would say a couple of things, like as we start to go a little bit further into the recommendations, and if there's some push and pull, I would be open to, just one new homeless navigator. And the third bullet regarding who we'd take out of the 32, the below 32 degrees in terms of that requiring a Westminster tie. I mean, there's people that are on the Arvada border, or, I just can't imagine just saying, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know anyone in Westminster, I'm sorry, we can't help you. So I just think about our parameters there, and not be so stringent in the actual execution of when we are allowing people to utilize the extra shelter option under 32 degrees. So that's just my point there. I'm okay with this for now, but I think that there may be some other priorities that layer.
Councilor Ireland?
I have to agree with Dave Demont, Councilor Demont. So homelessness it's a complicated issue, and I've read up a lot about it, and I've seen the problems it causes in cities that just pour money and more money and more money into it and give more and more and more and more to the homeless, and the problem just gets bigger. I'm just reading about California has $28 billion missing that they allocated for the homeless. And has their problem gone away? It's gotten bigger. The more you give to people and they don't have to put anything into it, getting themselves out of their situation, the more it keeps them there. So we have to find a way to help people get self-sufficient, get a job. And that's why I'm concerned about this low-income housing that we do, because when people start getting a job, then they don't qualify for the low-income housing anymore. And then they can't, it's this vicious cycle. So I feel like it'd be more compassionate if someone got a job to give them housing and let them work for 2 years before you raise their rent or whatever, instead of automatically raising their rent when they get a job. I just think we're in a vicious cycle that we're not solving the problem of getting people to be self-sufficient and staying in this cycle and throwing more and more money at it and thinking it's going to stick. And so I like the scenario you had before this scenario better than this scenario. I don't think we should add 2 more homeless navigators. I don't think we should make homelessness more something that we're focused on, that we think people should be in forever. We need to have ways to get people out of homelessness. Those that are capable of getting out of homelessness. Not everyone is, I agree to that. There's some people that are on drugs, they have drug problems, but we need to find ways to solve the problem, not make it bigger. And I feel like our society has made it bigger just because we don't reward work. What is the consequence when these people get a place to live? Do they have to do anything in our society to have that room? Do they have to go out and pick up after whatever encampment that they made? Do they have to do anything for us, for getting taxpayers to pay for their choices? My kids make choices, and some of them are bad, but there has to be consequences or there's no behavior changes. And I feel like we don't reward good behavior. And that's why we end up in this cycle forever. So that's my 2 cents. I'm not for this, but I'm sure there are people that are. So, but I see it, it's not working. Counselor Hott?
Yeah, as someone on council who's experienced homelessness, I actually had a job when I lost my home, and many folks who are unhoused do have jobs. It's, if you can't afford a home, even if you have a job, it doesn't give you a home. And if it wasn't for the help I received, I would have never gotten out of homelessness. I would not be a tax-paying member of society. And I do know that we have a very high rate with our continuum of compassion of working with folks that end up getting housed. First, I just want to thank you for your work on this. I think you did a really good job listening. I am really excited to see 2, not just 1 homeless navigator. I was asking for 1 because it seemed like we might not even get 1. So to see that we can get 2 makes me very, very happy, because I don't think 1 is enough. I do have a question. So I am a little bit of uncomfortable using the $1 million now, but I'm okay with it because we're going into winter and folks need help now, and we don't know what exactly is happening in Arvada, when it's going to happen. That's at least going to be, a year and a half, 2 years potentially away. And so I do like that this is something we can do right now, especially before the weather changes. I do have a question. When we talked about the appropriation that went to navigation centers, it was 50% was going to Lakewood and 50% was going to Arvada. Were we able to see if that's an agreement that was already made, or if that was just what we were thinking? Or have we made that agreement with Lakewood?
We have not signed an MOU or agreement, but we were looking to potentially split the dollars, and Tomas, I'll let you speak more to that.
Yeah, that was the original idea, was to split the dollars between the 2. The Arvada project has been progressing much more quickly than Lakewood. I'm not sure that the Lakewood one is actually progressing at all right now. There is no written agreement. There's been verbal discussions about this commitment.
I just think that the potential for Arvada to serve Westminster is a lot higher than Lakewood, and it would make more sense to allocate those dollars to Arvada. That's my opinion, but I just want to thank you, staff, for the work that you did on this. I'm really happy with everything that's in there, so I just want to thank you.
Councilor Azadi?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add that I agree with a lot of what Councilor Ireland was saying, and I think that's why it's important to invest in navigators. As I'll repeat these stats from our navigators, there's 60% of people that our navigators deal with get housed. 60%. And overall, and that's permanently housed, not temporarily housed. And that, to me, is what we should be shifting towards, more preventative, right? So I'm a big fan I'm uncomfortable as well, but I think this is one of those situations where we need to do something now. And after that meeting last week, the Arvada meeting didn't go very well. There's the community meeting that they had. So rather than waiting years, because it could be several years away for a project to be completed on their side, I think we can do what we can today to help invest in real solutions that can have a lasting impact. And investing in navigators is the best way of ensuring that we focus on permanent housing, because permanent housing is prevention, and that's what we should be shifting more towards. Thanks.
Councilor Carmelia?
I'd just like to break down the costs a little bit more so that I can understand. I'll wait a second till we're done.
It was a little loud.
I'm hoping that we're prepared to break these down a little bit. I'm wondering where the majority of the cost is, and I'm assuming it's probably going to be answered by the last bullet here, which is the MAC shelter, but because I don't see the vans in here, which I think are somewhat expensive, I knew that was a big ask, but I see vouchers for laundry services. So breaking this down a little bit, so how much are the vouchers for laundry services, either each or expected cost annually, either way?
We haven't gone to the full level of detail at that point in time. It will take our navigators and Kate and her team to break it down. And sorry, I don't mean to speak for you, Tomas.
That's well said.
We know at least for the two navigators, it would be potentially between 80 and 100,000 for salary and benefits. When we look at our current budgets, about $289,000 plus or minus are used for bridge housing, medical support, and move-in costs, and about $360,000 are used for crisis response, immediate needs, and sheltering. So thinking about that 360 is potentially a starting point for looking at those immediate services for hotel vouchers. Same time, there's also going to be some logistical elements to work through to make sure we secure enough hotels to be able to utilize those vouchers. Also to potentially have wraparound services, because as we're putting somebody into a hotel, depending on their circumstances, may need some additional support. So we're still working through those details. This was our starting point, and we will fine tune it as we go through. It's something that's going to be a work in progress, and it's going to take us a little bit of time to know exactly what the need is on the how many 32-degree nights. I don't know. We had snow this past weekend in the mountains. Doesn't mean it's going to be a colder winter. Maybe it's a milder. We don't know what is in front of us. So based upon where we're starting with the about $1 million budget now, kind of thinking of the 360 for that crisis response is where we're starting. But until we really start to unpack it a bit further, and also the need with the laundry services, especially with the Westminster Health Club coming into play with 2 locations that they will be sponsoring, to see how we can coordinate and collaborate together. I think there's a bit of a question mark, but we know we want to invest and to navigate it.
Okay, and then I think it was provided originally in the budget, I don't have it in front of me, but do we have some sort of estimate for what our cost would be for the shelter if we went to 20 degrees? And I know I mentioned it the last time, but again, we did already vote on that earlier in the year, so that's where that should, I think, be our baseline. And I agree 32 is humane, but I'm just trying to cover all our options here.
Barbara, will you speak to that?
Yep.
If we were to do approximately 3 months, which at this scenario, we're averaging about 58 days that are at 20 degrees or lower. However, what we were recommending is going based on the premise of if it's a shelter of over 10 days a month, so 3 months. That was estimated to be, I apologize. Approximately over $1 million, I apologize.
Take your time.
I'm just gonna do a quick calculation here. About $1.6 million to operate about 3 months. Now that's assuming the current model that we've been using, which is using self-select staff who have self-selected to participate in support. They do it as a side component on their jobs. Candidly, if we're operating 3 months solid, we're not going to be able to use the similar staffing model, so we have to figure out how we would staff it differently. Because it's like somebody like me volunteering my hours, that's one thing. But for folks who are overtime eligible, they are compensated for their overtime. So if they're either being pulled out of their daily job to be able to do a shift, or if they are volunteering on weekends or evenings to work additional hours. So that is one component that we have not been able to identify cleanly as to how we would staff it. We know that we would obviously look to try to continue a contract, but that's for certain components. There's still a certain component that we still need to have staff, City of Westminster staff there to help support.
So if we're at that much, which isn't, presented here for the 20, then clearly the 32 is much, much higher.
Yes.
We are estimating between like 1.8 and $2 million.
Okay.
There's also a consideration for the impact for the services at the MAC that would no longer be offered when we would shift gears to then turn it into a sheltering operation. So that there's, as we support some within the community, there's also an impact or a balance to be aware of as well.
Okay. Well, this isn't going the way I hoped. I'll just say I echo the concern. I'm not comfortable using the dollars. My initial instinct is that I'm not comfortable reallocating the $1 million because that is set aside for a larger purpose that hopefully can go to a longer term plan, right, to help overall. And I'm hearing Councilor Azadi's and Hott's argument, which are pretty convincing, that if we are struggling to put together that plan for the Arvada shelter, if it is delayed, then what do we do in the next 2-3 years? How long will it take to open? So I'm just saying that I'm trying to think through any other options. I don't know where I stand right now. I'm trying to figure out what else we can do here. I guess I'll leave my questions here. I'm hoping somebody else has some more questions to ask.
Would it be helpful to go through the other 4 and then, because I'm hearing some saying about prioritizing, because we don't have a wishing well here, and go back and then we'll come back and try to prioritize for you.
We're open to your direction, Mayor. All right. Councilor Demont's got his hand raised.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I just want to make one other point of thought, and we can go through it because I think that's a good idea. But one of the other reasons that I have some pause is because we're reallocating $1 million that we have. We have that $1 million. So next year, say they come in, we have to allocate $1 million because they get their plan together, and both Lakewood and Arvada, magically come up with a plan. Then we have a program that we are allocating $1 million to, and either that, if we want that to continue, then we're going to have $2 million gap next budget cycle. So, I'm thinking of that too, because I know when we added the co-responders, that was originally done off of a state grant, and eventually that went away. That was, it was the right thing to do, and the right thing to do was to continue that program, but we had to have the budget, and this economic uncertainty that we're seeing that causes a lot of the homelessness. I mean, it's just, that's a big dollar number for us to say, okay, we're going to use that now. Then, if we have to cover it on top of covering $1 million worth of new spend, next year's council might have, that's a lot potentially have to deal. So I just wanted to, make that part of the point too, because I didn't clearly speak that, I don't think.
Okay, let's go to number 2.
All right, so there was some discussion last week about water rates. And within the last 2 weeks, the city went out and financed a significant amount of funds for the drinking water facility. And the rate, as you're aware, the rate we're paying on that debt, the interest rate came in a bit lower than what was initially projected when we talked to council in July. Aaron, was that in July?
Yes.
About water rates for 2025. So with that information on a rapid turnaround, staff has worked up a couple of options around that 4.5% and what we could do to lower that 4.5% water rate. So again, that's based on the savings on the interest rate, the awesome folks in the city's finance department and the longstanding work of great financial management around the utility has allowed us to leverage. That's really the change that we're looking at, just the change in interest rate and what it allows us to do in terms of water rates. So we've proposed 3 options. One, the existing option, which maintains the water rate at 4.5% for both 25 and 26. A second one that moves to 4% and 4% in 25 and 26. And a third, 3.75% in 2025 and 4.25 in 2026. And I think you'll see with both of those options, our magic number is right around an 8% revenue increase between 2025 and 2026. Just a little bit of more information around the impact of those increases on the city's average ratepayer, low water user, average water user, and high water user between those 3 options across both the water and sewer increases. And then lastly, staff wanted to show what we're looking at when we seek to balance these rates out over a long-term forecast. So what we're demonstrating here is the 10-year planning horizon that we typically utilize. The yellow portion of the bar at the very bottom is the rate stabilization reserve that's for the water fund. That's right around $12 million. And then the rest of the bars is cash on hand or ending cash balance within each of those rate options for each year. And what staff is looking at as we plan out over 10 years is where that ending cash balance with a planned and projected CIP, with some planned debt issuances for major projects, some burn down of a significant amount of capital funding over the next couple of years as we spend down the debt that's associated with the drinking water facility. And so certainly each of these options has an impact. You'll see at the very right hand side of the cash ending balance. But staff is comfortable that either of those 2 options, 4 and 4, or the 3.75 and the 4.25, will leave the city in a positive financial position in a projection 10 years out from now. I believe that's the 3 slides we've got on this, so if we want to stop and speak to those.
Councilor Demott?
First of all, thank you. I think that one of the things that I know that our staff is fully capable of is finding ways to make this not the ceiling. And we showed that when we changed gears on the water plant and came up with more inventive ways for us to accomplish what the city needed in terms of a fresh drinking water plant. And this is the same thing. So what I would hope, I like option 2 because it's just balanced across both. I would love to see, if you could have come up with even less. But to me, the exercise is showing the residents that we're trying. We're not always going to just go with the ceiling because that's the easy button. So, you know, and I appreciate the long-term projections of it. And what I would hope that, you know, future councils and staffs do is continue to look every budget cycle to really say, okay, you know, where could we squeeze it, still fill the needs of the utility, but also try to make it as least impactful for the residents. And that's really always been my goal with this. I understand that costs are always going to go up. It's just the reality of, you know, of the world. So I see it every time I go to the grocery store, as much as I know you do, and our utilities no different when they go to buy equipment or pay our people. So I am personally comfortable with option 2. I think it's balanced. I would also be open to option 3. And you know, but my big thing is just thank you for hearing. And then, you know, I don't think this work is ever going to be done. This is always going to be a balance that we have to do, in making sure that we're leaving no stone unturned. And, you know, as we think through things, we don't get tunnel vision in how we're going to accomplish delivering clean drinking water to residents.
I'll say, echoing the sentiment, thank you for doing this work. I am in favor of option 2 because it provides a stable number that residents can have some expectation of what their, you know, percentage year over year might be. And it also sets for us, because anything that's done more than 1 year, it sets sort of a precedent for our new baseline, so that hopefully in the following years we can try hard to stick to that number, because we will have the pressure to do so. And I think that's that can be a good thing. So I like that it sets a precedent for saying, okay, now we're at 4, not 4.5.
Councilor Ireland?
My trouble with it, so this plant is probably gonna be more than we're saying it is. That's usually how it goes. The land is already more than we said it was gonna be. So what happens when we do 4%, 25, 26, and we don't have enough money, then we have to raise it way up the next year? Because it was a really wet year next year, and we didn't make enough money to pay for the plant. I've seen that happen. That's why I was a water warrior. We had 80% increases in 3 years. So I'm afraid that'll happen again if we say we're gonna lower it, and then suddenly we have to raise it because it wasn't enough.
Thank you for the questions, Councillor. Brian Donahue, who is our subject matter expert and does our modeling for our utility, will address some future scenarios, 2 of which you asked about. So Brian, if you want to go ahead and tackle that.
Good evening, Council. Brian Donahue, Business Operations Administrator. So right now we have built into the financial models for water 4% in 25, 4% in 26 for this option 2 scenario, and then in out years we have 4.5% built in for the planning horizon. We also have a fully funded rate stabilization reserve at about $12 million right now, just in case we do get into a scenario that you're addressing right now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, I also want to thank you. So I am also for option 2, so that way there isn't the increase from 25 to 26. So yeah, I prefer option 2.
Councilor Azadi?
I'm for option 2. I think it's built into from the savings we had from the new loan, so I think it makes sense. Just want people to understand though that this is not a water rate decrease. We're just saying we're not going to increase your bills to the ceiling, which is why I'm in support of the next topic that we're going to talk about. But for this one, this is fine. Option 2 is good.
I'm good with option 2 as well.
I am too. So you've got this one wrapped up.
That's all.
Check it off. Number 3.
Just gotta write it all down first. So option 3, or budget amendment C, is to expand our water bill assistance program. The request was to increase the funding for the water bill assistance program. Staff has proposed 2 options for City Council to review and are seeking your direction. Option 1 is to keep the current bill at $20 per month and provide sufficient funding so that no customer will be denied due to lack of funding by the city, and to establish the utility bill roundup program. This would cost between $80,000 and $190,000. Option.
This would increase the budget by
Sorry.
$80,000.
Sorry, thank you.
Yep.
Option 2, increase the bill credit to $25 per month and provide sufficient funding so that no customers are denied due to lack of funding by the city, and establish a bill roundup program. This would increase the budget by $115,000 to $225,000. Over time, the utility roundup program will begin to offset the additional expenses depending on the participation levels. In the meantime, the Water Utility Fund will be able to absorb these additional costs to expand the bill assistance program, with the key that no one will be turned away if the need is there.
Question with number 2. Is there a cost for whoever has to manage the roundup? Another person, half a person?
We don't see that need right now, Mayor. I mean, the program, at the current levels of participation and then the projected level of participation for next year, we don't foresee that right now. So that's not to say if it gets much bigger, doubles in size, for example, we may have to revisit that.
Councilor Ireland?
So where's the money coming from to raise it? It's got to come from somewhere.
As it would be, so the water utility operations and maintenance budget is over $27 million. And it consists of multiple line items that pay for commodities like chemicals and power and things like that, that we do our very best to project exactly what that's going to cost in the coming year. Those line items come in over and under, depending on how the year shakes out. So we would anticipate something being available in there to cover this. It's a lot of money, but relatively small to the size of the enterprise. And if not there, we do have some savings on particular capital projects that we are wrapping up that we might be able to use for this. And then with, you know, for then that would be the those are two places out of current line items or capital project savings. And then if we implement the Roundup program, that will begin to offset some of this as well. We'll know more after we get through FY25 coming into 26 about exactly what this is going to be and where we can fund it. We'll build it back into the program.
Okay, well, I see a lot of places where I would cut if I were in charge. But, like, I was given the 8 employees, it's up to $1 million for 8 new employees, and I know you're cutting your position, but how much is that? It doesn't offset $1 million.
With respect to positions in the memo here, those are primarily general fund.
Okay, but so the water fund can only be used for this. We can't use any other fund for helping people with their water bill.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so the water fund is an enterprise that takes in revenues from the sale of water, and it pays for expenses related to the operation of that enterprise. So expenses related to water can be funded out of the water fund. We have to keep that tight connection to maintain the enterprise status under the taxpayer bill of rights. as we've talked about previously, the city's general fund could subsidize up to 10% of the water fund. The city in the past 3 years has leveraged that ability and infused $15 million worth of cash into the water fund. So we have done that previously. There are, so yes, money can be transferred into the water fund to help pay for water fund expenses.
Okay, another question. So we do this, I don't know how many people are impacted. Do you even have a population that's impacted that would use this? And what is it costing the rest of us to subsidize them?
The current projections to finish out this year are 625 people. We're 450-ish right now at this point in time, and then we'll be 30 to 40% of those, I believe, is senior population.
Well, they're on fixed incomes, so every increase we have is affecting them more. So I can understand that.
Maybe I could help with that. So the way to, one other way to look at this is that this becomes a priority commitment for the utility, so that this receives the priority funding in that sense, and that we have and will create room elsewhere in that utility while staying within the revenue stream that we just showed you for the rate increases. So that's the revenue for the utility. So we won't go over our revenue that we get for the utility. So this doesn't impact the other ratepayers in that sense. And what Mr. Knippel described is that in the large purchases of chemicals, the decision to replace, say, the furniture in one of our treatment facilities can be deferred for a year, and that this remains the priority. So we wouldn't in that example, wouldn't prioritize a planned furniture replacement over providing this funding for, or this offset, this program. So I just want to assure council that when it comes to something like this, it becomes a priority expenditure item in the utility, but we don't change the total budget balance for the utility. That makes sense.
Councilor Camelia?
I don't see in our overall sense of the budget a whole lot of difference between 190 and 225. That's 35K, right? And so I just know being on a fixed income, every dollar counts. So on this issue, I'm in support of option 2, especially seeing as it's something that we can do and that we're going to have customers doing a roundup option if they want to participate, and that'll help offset the cost anyway. The significance here is not very much, so let's do it.
How are we going to advertise the Roundup program?
We haven't figured that out yet. So we'll have to, it's gonna take some time to stand up in our business processes and our systems. It's gonna take the better part of 25 to get it ready to go. That gives us a little bit of runway to figure out how we socialize it. It'll be in our water bills, I think, would be one thing. There's space on the utility bill, rather, where there's room for notices. Website presence, I suppose there could be a social media component to socializing it.
I would say let's not forget that a lot of people do auto pay, and I think that's been a thing where we lose that opportunity. I don't know if I want to say lose it, but we miss that opportunity where we're not thinking about those folks. So I'd say yes, and let's make sure that we're doing some social media. I think that this is a decent balanced approach that you put an option to, for some of the same reasons that Councilor Camelia said, as far as like what it is in overall budget. I would just re-emphasize my ask as we move forward that we balance programs like this versus the entirety of the system and the other ratepayers. This is supposed to be for folks that are like in fixed income seniors and stuff. So I think that you have given us some good options so that we have some balance across those different buckets. So I would for option 2.
Councilor Azadi?
Thank you. So I'm in support of option 2 because a $25 credit to those in need can be the difference, right? For a family looking to afford their extra groceries, or the single mother who needs a little bit more for her rent. You know, it's important, but also it's important to realize that when we talk about 60% AMI, a lot of our residents actually fall in that. And a commonly used definition sets a middle class income between 67 and 200K. Most people, for a family of 4, and most people consider the lower end of that range, so 75 to 100K as middle class. And I think I would love to, and we know that 40% of the participants in the current program are seniors on fixed incomes. So I think as much as we can do, so $25 per month makes sense. And I would love to know if anyone has any ideas on how we can even expand the eligibility of the program, because I know that was a concern last week from some folks, to as many people as we can without overloading that budget. But I'm in support of option 2.
Yeah, I'm also in support of option 2.
Option 2.
I think I'm the last one, and that'd be option 2 too.
I just think there's places in our budget too that we could cut, like surveys. I hope we're not doing any more surveys without our permission, because we did a lot of surveys without the city council knowing, and they're expensive. And I'd rather use them for something that's helping seniors than surveying and not use the data anyway, the way it was. I mean, some of them are really poorly worded, in my opinion. You're not getting results you should. Also, we have a community, whatever, nonprofit salary of $115,000 a year. This seems to me be more nonprofit and helping actually citizens in our city than whatever our nonprofit Natalie Martinez is doing. So I can see, you know, maybe scaling back that. There's just ways we could find money. Some of these events we're losing tons of money on. I see she got $18,000 from Top Taco or whatever it was, and the city lost, what, $40,000 or something on it. This just cannot go on for our citizens. There's people out there really hurting, and we're celebrating Top Taco and giving $18,000 to Natalie, and I don't know what she's doing with the money, but it's not helping the people that are in our city that are hurting, or else, you know, it's all these little things that add up. And I know being on an HOA board where the money is even tighter, all these little things add up over the years if you just keep compounding and compounding. So we can look for ways to find more money for helping seniors get to here and there, or their water bills or whatever, by cutting back some of this waste.
Number 4.
Budget Amendment D, to increase the Human Services Board funding. The ask was to increase the funding by $25,000. Staff proposed to reduce several line items within central charges, which is, we reduced it within professional services, contractual services, and postage, for a total of $25,000 to increase the proposed 2025 HSB funding from $130,000 to $155,000.
Councilor Carmelia?
Could you jog my memory? What was the ask? What, the Human Services Board and the 25, just
So
what did we say?
The current Human Services Board budget is $130,000, and the ask was to increase it by $25,000.
That didn't help, but okay.
They received
Oh.
$295,410
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
in requests for funding.
Oh, because this funds all of our various, okay, got it, thank you.
I've just always had trouble with this one because people are confused enough that we aren't a county. And where does our money come from? So again, this is X money being used to give out to the different nonprofits. Some of the nonprofits aren't in Westminster. I do know in the past when I've sat on the board, they have asked how many Westminster people do you at least see so that we knew a number that they saw for whatever they were asking. So it will continue to go up. We aren't in this business. So that's just where I sit. Councilor DeMott?
I mean, and I understand that the nonprofits are hurting. I've sit on a variety of boards of nonprofits over the years. So I understand, but to the mayor's point, you know, we have our budget and we have purpose. We just went through a line that if you think about reallocating that money to that program, if you're talking about seniors, I've heard the mayor share before that her water bill is $40 a month. If you really want to help a senior out, you could take that money and allocate it, and actually, instead of doing $25 a month, people that are in that bucket, you could give them $40, which is our business.
Yeah.
Water is our business. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not fully opposed, but if I had my others, I probably would reallocate that money to a program that makes more sense for the services that we actually provide.
Do we know how much it usually goes up year over year? Or has it?
And it hasn't went up for a while. Did you find out?
There's
when it
usually
went?
an ask.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was on there, they wanted it sky high.
So
Over
in-
COVID, we did put more, but.
In 2019, it increased from 120,000 to 125,000. And then in 2020, excluding any of the additional ARPA or other supplemental, it went from 125 to 130,000, and it's remained at 130,000 since 2020.
I'm okay with it moving up. You know, given that we don't have a track record of increasing it annually, I think this is a reasonable increase, and it may sit here for a while. And at least this provides a little bit of catch-up. Money doesn't go as far, and so I feel like this is more like an inflation adjustment than anything else. So, yeah.
Councilor Highland?
I agree with Councilor DeMont about it. I'm all for nonprofits. I actually work with a nonprofit at church. I appreciate, actually I didn't acknowledge Mary McNally and Councilor Camellia came and made foster care blankets with me. So I appreciate what nonprofits do. But on the other hand, I want to help the people in our city because that's who we represent, that's paying their taxes, they're trying to do, you know, make ends meet. So I'm all for helping more people with their water bill than spending $25,000 more for who we don't know where that goes. I was happy to see that Precious Child made $850,000 off their event, though. I think some of these events help them make more money, so I see that too. And I do think Precious Child has done a lot. So I'm kind of at a crossroads.
Yeah, I had to think it through. But seeing as it hasn't gone up from 2020, I will say I'm in support for this. I mean, they did find room to cut down in other areas, so technically this isn't, I don't believe, technically costing us. And since it's been 4 years and we know how much inflation has gone up, as soon as I heard that, I was about to echo Mayor Pro Tem's sentiment. This is more of an inflation adjustment, in my opinion. I think it is what it is.
I asked for it. thank you for finding ways to fund it.
Counselor Zadi?
Yes, I'm for it.
Okay, you've got your 4.
Mayor, if I could just, on that last point about number of residents served, so HSB on their application still continues to request that information. The HSB tracks that information through both the application and then the report after the end of the year. So that is information that's available, and the HSB uses that to make their recommendation.
Okay, you've got your 4, so number 5.
So budget amendment E was to fund small business assistant programs to increase the funding for those programs. After a thorough evaluation of the current proposed funding for 2025, as well as anticipated needs for business assistant programs in 2024, staff expect to utilize most or all of the available small business funds. So additional funds will not be requested in 2025. However, staff may seek supplemental appropriations in 2025 if necessary. Looking ahead in 2026, based upon some of the conversations and feedback, we will be looking to integrate these programs into our operating budget rather than our CIP budget. But there's no dollars, and this is an update. We determined no dollars were needed.
Is everybody okay with that?
Thank you.
So these are our 5 budget.
Okay. Is everybody okay? Not okay? You're not okay?
Well, okay, I just question regarding, because we didn't have as much detail last time regarding what we would need. So in terms of the programs that we've set aside money for this year, is it comparable? Is it the same amount that we would be utilizing and have at our disposal for next year?
We're not proposing any reductions to the service levels for those programs, for those small business assistance programs.
Thank you for integrating it into a different path next year.
All right, Mayor, we've reached the end of the 5 that were proposed, so I think we have to go back to the, thank you.
Counselor Azadi, are you okay with what they're proposing?
Yeah, I'm surprised that they're asking for more for the small business program. But if staff is okay with it, I'm good.
Okay, so we're good on 5. So we need to go back to number 1.
I mean, it didn't resolve on its own.
Yeah.
It's just when you go to 32 degrees, it gets very expensive. And there's more people that will use it because they'll know about it. Our city only does 0, but Westminster does 32, so they'll all come over here. And our taxpayers will be paying for it all. And I don't think it's okay. Because most of the taxpayers I talk to are mad that homeless are camping in their public parks or their yards. When I ran for office and walked block to block, I would say majority of people are either mad about their water bills or the homelessness and the crime.
Is it more affordable, and again, I know it's hard to give estimates because we don't have all these people in front of us to use it, but is it more affordable to give out hotel vouchers at 32 degrees than to utilize the MAC shelter?
Yes, and that's what we're proposing.
And it's more desirable by the individuals that we're assisting. Congregate care is only really utilized as far as volume of people utilizing it in those more severe temperatures. They have the option to be in an individual room. That's where you're going to get the people who will actually utilize the services.
Okay. And then if we had 2 more homeless navigators, it sounds like we would be able to reach at least 50 more in individual cases, but hopefully a wider breadth of the population. And so we might be better meeting the need anyway.
That would be a fair
Fair assessment.
assumption.
I guess I'm wondering if maybe we change the language between, okay, yes, we go into, like our city's code is 32 degrees, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we activate the max shelter. Maybe what that means is, you know, we send out all of our volunteers and our navigators, et cetera, to get the biggest impact into the community and get these vouchers out there. Maybe it's a different response.
So, Counselor, I think that's generally what we're proposing, and maybe I should speak through this to make sure we're all on the same page. So what we're proposing is to maintain the existing emergency shelter service that opens when temperatures fall below 0 degrees. And that request from council at that 32 degree level, the way we're proposing to meet that is between 0 and 32 degrees is when this team would hit the streets and provide hotel vouchers to ensure that there is an option for people experiencing homelessness within that temperature range. The homeless navigators, the additional homeless navigators would allow us to reach a broader portion of that population who would be able to utilize that service.
Then I guess I'm not seeing where the cost for $1 million is, because homeless navigators, that's $200K. The hotel vouchers, I'm not sure, but where's the cost then?
The
Are we necessarily spending $1 million on the
Why-
program? I think that's the question.
Yeah, where's the $1 million? Because I don't see it.
2 people, the hotel vouchers and the vouchers for laundry services. And I think staff is saying any additional services that the homeless navigation team puts together to provide, right? You said, you had some language
Wraparound.
along those lines. Thank you.
Could I add on this also so the 2 homeless navigators clearly not just activated during the cold weather. So they're going to be now in the field full-time and assisting, seeing winter coming, in other words, and assisting proactively people to find these other accommodations. And so the thinking is that over time, they could potentially have an offsetting impact on the population in this community in Westminster that is unhoused by identifying year-round options to get people into permanent housing before the cold snaps come in winter, which would ideally start to reduce the load on city frontline resources like the MAC, which is in effect a last resort for folks who haven't or won't access these other avenues. But there will be 8 to 9 months of the year where our navigators will be working continually with the population well in advance of winter. So there will be some expenditures too, right? Some increased voucher access, wraparound service access, ideally with the objective of ultimately reducing the expenditures in this area. We would have, under this scenario, we would have a year's experience when we, or a little less than a year's experience when we come back to City Council and start working through the 2026 budget. So we'll have much more data on what, what the next year almost would bring. And that was the thinking with accessing the $1 million that's been set aside for the Arvada Center. As much as Lakewood is a long way off from making progress, Arvada is not going to be moving very quickly by the looks of it. It hasn't yet, and so we would have time to identify with City Council options moving through the next budgets into and through the next budget cycle with what we actually saw. So we'd report out the actual expenditures in whatever program Council directs us to do tonight, and then build that into our 2026 budget options for you.
Okay, thank you. I support everything you said, and so it's interesting. So I guess I misunderstood this. I thought the major expense was activating the MAX shelter at 32. It turns out that's not the case, and so really we're not changing anything we're currently doing in this except for adding to homeless navigators and then the additional funds that creates with the vouchers that they're handing out. And so I still struggle to see how that's this cost. That's $200K for annual.
No, I'm not for it. I was just gonna say.
And then I guess even with all the vouchers in the world, I guess I can't even see how that would hit $500K. And I think that I'm for this because I don't think that it'll cost $1 million now that I understand that it's really just 2 homeless navigators that we're adding.
Maybe so the $1 million is there, in a sense, So 1 year, it likely wouldn't draw the million, but because the commitment is an operating commitment, there's quite a buffer built in as we head into the 26 budget process to see what we actually spent. So it could either say one of two things differently. It could say invest up to $1 million and or reevaluate in the 26 budget cycle, and you may end up having only drawn $400,000 in this coming year for this solution.
I guess the real question comes to, are we comfortable, because I mean, this is all estimating process, you know? I don't see us spending more than 500 for sure. I mean, I hope not, but are we comfortable taking that kind of a bet when I'd prefer not to use that million for anything else? But again, we don't know how fast they're gonna move, and our community needs solutions today. So I'm kind of trying to weigh that piece right there.
Councilor Ireland?
Well, 32 degrees is going to make a lot more people come to Westminster. I don't know what the other cities are doing around us. Are they all 32 degrees?
Denver just announced that they will be activating their shelters at 32. They are transitioning 3 facilities that had been utilized for people moving into the area, and as those folks have dispersed, they are converting those, as I understand it. As far as the other communities around us, Lakewood does have their center as a day center, and they will activate as a emergency cold weather shelter. Apologies. Cold weather shelter. And then the way that most of them work is it's 20 degrees and wet, 32 degrees and dry. Did I say that backwards? I said that backwards. 32 degrees of wet, 20 degrees dry is when they will activate additional support services. But
we're
it's not been
32
consistent around
across the
the
board, so we're going to get a lot. It's going to be more expensive than you think, because you'll get more people. It's just supply and demand.
And I'll just offer that as far as I know, our city is the only one that I know of. Maybe you can tell me if there's any other city you know of that is at 0.
Many cities around here don't activate shelters, period.
Okay, that's fine.
They are starting to, but they have not consistently. We were one of the first.
Okay.
Sir DeMont?
I was just gonna ask if we could do an up-down on this, because we seem like we're going in circles.
He's getting tired over there.
How many want it as it sits?
I'll take it.
Councilor Azadi?
Yes, I'm for it.
Okay, you got your 4. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your feedback tonight. We'll be back on October 14th for first reading of the 2025 budget and all the associated actions that go along with that. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for all your extra energy.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for all your work.
Okay, do we need a break before we go to exec session?
Be out of here today.
Yeah, we're doing
Yeah,
it.
let's keep trucking.
We're all,
Everyone else.
we're all in it.
Mayor, may I take a couple of minutes to end the web?